talk, but we all ready? We'd like to welcome everyone out to the Highland City Council meeting on Tuesday, April 15th, 2024. If you've not done your taxes, we recommend you leave at this time and get going. Anyway, we'd like to welcome you out to the meeting tonight. We'll begin our meeting with an invocation by Councilmember Kim Riddell, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Brittany Bills.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're very grateful to be gathered here today and to be able to be here as council, as residents and mayor and staff. And we ask you in this moment to please bless us to be able to make the best decisions we need to make for all residents of Highland. Also, please bless us to have thy spirit that we might be civil with one another and be able to say the things we need to say in a kind voice. We are especially grateful to be able to live in this community, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to welcome once again everyone out. We'll begin our meeting for what's called unscheduled public appearances. So if there's anything that, as we look across the agenda, we don't have anything on the agenda that has a public hearing on it. So if you're here to discuss with the council any item, we recommend at this time you come up and address the council. If you'll please just give us your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes. So at this time, we'd like to invite you to come up.
I'm Elizabeth Rice and been a Highland resident for 26 years. So first of all, I wanted to thank the fire department for sending a fire truck to a little 3-year-old birthday party. It was really adorable. I've got great photos and great video. And you made his day. He wants to be a fireman when he grows up. So it was really nice. And those 2 firemen were awesome with him. I had a really interesting, and this goes along with cell towers, and pardon me if I ramble a little bit because I don't know how much you want to know. But I've lived in Highland for 26 years, and I've been with AT&T since about 2000, well, since the iPhone came out, which I think was 2008 or 10. And I haven't had really good cell reception for the last 2 years. So I kind of had an interesting conversation with AT&T for 4 hours. And the tech people would ping my cell phone off of the various cell towers, and this is what they told me. They said, well, it looks like you ping off Lehigh, but we've got 1 cell tower down in Lehigh, and we've got 2 cell towers down in Highland. And I said, so where are those 2 cell towers? Because I thought, first of all, that didn't sound right that there were 2 cell towers for AT&T, but he said, well, they're not that close together, so I don't know if Alpine has one. It might be Alpine. He said, the one that is down should be operational by last Saturday, which it never was because the people that have AT&T internet they never had any internet, and they do it off their cell towers. The other one that was supposed to be operational like at the end of April. So here's my thinking. I'm really curious as to what obligation maybe, and maybe this is a discussion, for you guys, because I'm very illiterate on this. It just doesn't seem right that, if 1 cell tower doesn't work, we're just going to go put up another one. And I don't know if it's the same company that deals with AT&T. We are actually leaving AT&T. We're going to go to T-Mobile because I have no bars at my house. So I just kind of wanted to put that bug in your ear. I talked to a couple of you, and I really appreciate the time you spent with me. But I don't understand why we don't make them operational, or they don't have an obligation to the city to make them operational if they sit on our property. Just a thought. The mayor asked a really good question at the workshop the other night a week ago. And I kind of wanted to address that for a minute because when I left Planning Commission, Canal Boulevard was actually designed, and I thought by the county, it could be by UDOT at that time, to be a main artery. And that is why there are no driveways along there. We now have one driveway on there, and I don't know if that's an ask for forgiveness rather than permission, but that is why it is wider. The other one that was on there was 1100 North American Fork that was actually supposed to go all the way to the I-15. And I saw those plans, so I know this is not hearsay. I saw them. I know what was there. Both American Fork and, of course, Highland, we kind of removed that because there's enough houses there, but there's no driveways on Canal Boulevard. That's why it's wider, and that's why 1100 North in American Fork is wider, but you have a junior high that sits there. But I just thought I would bring those two things, to your attention. But I think we need to do a little deep dive on the cell tower thing. If you don't, thank you for your time.
Anyone else like to come and address the council?
My name's Tracy Brewer, and I live in the Windsor Park subdivision, and I'm having some tree troubles on my property on the west side of it. There's just some really big elm trees there that are humongous that used to grow because of the Murdoch Canal running in the back of my yard, which there's also a bunch of bushes and stuff there, which is okay with us as long as it's not we've kind of worried about it being a fire hazard. But I've submitted a few work orders. I did this so far, I did in March, and then I did several last year, and then the year before that in fall. So it's been not quite a couple of years, but they're still there, and I didn't know what my next thing to do is. Do I just wait? I know the arborists, I've been talking to Gretchen, and she says that there's not really any arborists, or they're very limited. But I see they're doing some work in our park, right? In Windsor Park right now, they chopped down 3 big trees. And so I thought maybe they could just come on by and cut down mine too. But anyway, we're worried about them dropping into our yard. They're really, really big elm trees. So that's
Tracy,
why.
I think I'll help you. This did come up in the discussion actually last week. Aaron, do you remember, because you discussed that we had a Windsor Meadows, it was where the ditch was at, the trees have kind of died. I think this is the area. Do you remember, did we talk with Josh about trying to get over there and work it with
Actually, what we did, the extent of, so one of your other neighbors emailed me recently, and we agree most of the trees in that area are dead because it's a ditch that no longer gets water into it, right? Because it's been piped elsewhere. And so actually our plan, we're working on getting a bid from a landscaping company to come in and to clear out that area because it's to the level that we're not able as staff to take care of it. And we're just honestly waiting on that bid to come back.
Okay.
So that was the
I
thought.
thought it was kind of getting an answer. We've
clean
actually,
that up.
this came up, in specific area, and I thought, okay, let's kind of see what we've done to try to address it. So I appreciate you coming and kind of addressing. And so
Great.
I hate to say, it's in the
It's on
government
the docket. Okay.
aspect. We are aware of it, but I appreciate you coming to kind of share. So
Okay.
thank you, Tracy.
Thanks.
Was there anyone else who'd like to come address the council? Seeing none, we'll now close the portion of the unscheduled public appearances. And we'll go to, we have actually 4 consent items. We'd like to go ahead and, item 3D, we recommend that we pull that one, and there will be an actual motion to vote on that one. So there's an actual.
Mayor, did you want to do the presentations first?
Oh,
or
I'm sorry. We
consent?
do have Provo River here. We got the Provo River water users. So yes, we do. We want to go ahead. I'm sorry. We'll do the 2A. We have Provo River water users. We'd like to invite you guys to hear you. You do a lot of the water there in the Murdoch Canal, so we'd like to kind of get an update on some things.
Excellent, thank you. My name is Brad Jorgensen with Provo River Water Users. I've brought with me my boss. This is General Manager Jeff Budge, and we've been giving presentations on one of our big projects, the Deer Creek Intake Project. If you've had an opportunity to go past, if you've had a chance to go past up towards Heber and driven past Deer Creek for the past few years, you've seen barges on the reservoir. And Jeff has seen our presentation a few times and asked if we'd come and share that with you. So we'd like to be able to do this 3-year project, and we're just completing our 2nd year. So 1 more year of this, but this will give us a great update, and then we'd love to answer any questions you may have.
has been a successful year at the Deer Creek Intake Project site near Provo, Utah. The successful partnership continues between the Provo River Water Users Association, AE2S Advanced Engineering, and Granite Construction. Another major player this year was microtunneling subcontractor James W. Fowler. With the entry and exit portals completed in 2023, we were ready for microtunneling and bypass pipe installation to begin. After a brief winter shutdown, the job site quickly came back to life in the spring of 2024. Fowler invited AE2S and Granite to California to look at a similar Heron Connect tunneling machine. After that, Fowler mobilized and arrived on site in Utah in March to begin mobilizing their equipment. This included a launch seal to keep the entry portal watertight, a jacking frame to push the MTBM and pipes through the mountain, and a separation plant to remove rock pieces and fines from the tunnel spoils. The micro-tunnel boring machine, or MTBM as we call it, arrived on site in early April 2024 and was ready to launch into the mountains soon after. The machine was named the Wasatch Worm, after the Wasatch mountain range that surrounds Deer Creek and provides water to millions of Utahns. The bypass pipe was delivered in 20-foot sections from St. Charles, Missouri, where they were fabricated by Trinity Products. The sections are made from 7/8-inch thick carbon rolled steel with an abrasive resistant outer coating. They are joined together by Trinity's proprietary tri-lock joints, which provides a watertight seal using a system of interlocking teeth and rubber gaskets. The interior of each joint was also seal welded after installation for added protection. Each pipe was fabricated with a set of built-in ports that Fowler used to pump a bentonite lubricant around the outside of the pipe during the drive. The ports can then be reused for contact grout injection after the drive is finished. The first pipe in the string had a thicker section where the 68-inch steel bulkhead was installed to use as a plug when the machine would be eventually removed. Once launched, the contractor continuously pushed the machine through the rock, adding pipe to the end of the string 20 feet at a time. It was a repetitive process, but each day the worm inched closer and closer to its ultimate target. As the Wasatch Worm was making its way through the mountains, several of the original designers would stop by, and representatives from the Bureau of Reclamation, the Provo River Water Users Association, Advanced Engineering and Environmental Services AE2S, Black & Veatch, and the tunnel operators from Heron Connect, including Olivier from France and Russell from Washington. On July 13th, the MTBM finally reached the threshold for starting the wet recovery process, just 10 feet shy of the concrete head wall installed 75 feet underwater by divers in 2023. As a reminder, the head wall was built with a circular, unreinforced soft eye to serve as the target for the MTBM to hit when it exits the tunnel alignment. A wet recovery is when an MTBM finishes its tunnel drive underwater and must be brought to the surface to be recovered and is eventually reused on other future projects. This requires teams to work together from both sides of the finished tunnel. The recovery process began with redeployment of the crane barge, where we loaded with a 330-ton crane. And then we reinstalled the turbidity curtains to prevent sediment from entering the existing intake during punch-through. Not far behind was the dive barge, full of the crews of the divers and the equipment ready to receive the MTBM. As the MTBM slowly approached the head wall, we began to see pieces of grout in the tunneling spoils on the dry side of the dam. This is the same grout that was installed last year to secure the exit portal to the side of the mountain, and indicated that the MTBM was now within a few feet of the exit. At this point, several ROVs were in the water monitoring the head wall. The divers and many of the other team members watched the live feed from the surface. At 6:40 p.m., we were in our offices and up on the deck, and we saw the first signs of the punch-through as the small crack appeared in the bottom left corner of the soft eye, and bentonite slurry from the machine's cutter heads began leaking through. The team knew, and they held their breath in anticipation as the crack grew slowly and the machine carefully pushed its way through the opening. When the dust had cleared and the concrete from the soft eye was removed, ROV inspections revealed that the machine had hit its mark almost perfectly, within 2 inches of dead center. After pushing the machine to its final position, Fowler entered the back of the machine to seal everything off and, in their words, turn it into a submarine. The bulkhead was also sealed to isolate the microtunnel pipe from the reservoir. Once sealed, this door cannot be opened again until the bulkhead is removed from the reservoir in 2025. Now it was up to the divers to prepare the machine to be lifted to the surface. After attaching the crane rigging, they opened a port on the back of the machine to equalize the pressure. Hydraulic hoses were then lowered from a power unit on the surface and connected to that additional port. This allowed Fowler to actuate the separation cylinders at the back of the machine, slowly pushing it off the lead microtunnel pipe and allowing it to rest freely on the reception cradle. With all the precautions in place, the 330-ton crane slowly lifted the MTBM to the surface and placed it on the barge deck. As expected, the machine looked quite different on the exit side of the tunnel, with most of its red paint worn off and its cutter head wheels worn down significantly. This was a testament to the rough conditions encountered during tunneling. The divers then placed a custom fabricated pipe cap over the protruding microtunnel pipe to serve as a redundant plug for tunnel safety. With the cap secured in place, the team was ready to move the MTBM back to shore, where it was disassembled and loaded onto trucks to be taken off-site. Fowler then began grouting the pipe annulus. The grout was pumped through the same ports used for lubrication in each pipe to fill any remaining voids in the overcut. Each grout port then had to be plugged and seal welded to ensure water tightness along the entire pipe length. When the pipe was watertight, all that was left to do was to line the interior with an epoxy coating supplied by Tnemec. Gateway was the local painting specialist brought in to do the work. Paint crews worked around the clock until all 800 feet had been blasted, coated, and inspected by all coating experts. The final step was to seal off the microtunnel with a custom fabricated cap that was welded to the downstream end of the new pipe. This cap will remain in place as a secondary failsafe until the rest of the bypass piping is installed in 2025 and ready to be tied in. The divers had a second mission to accomplish while they were on site this year, which was preparing the original intake structure for some big upcoming project milestones. In 2025, when the bypass is fully online, the existing intake will be plugged with a 16-foot diameter bulkhead so that the entire system can be drained. To make room for the bulkhead installation, divers had to saw cut and remove one of the original concrete beams from the 1940 intake. The temporary steel beam was then manufactured and installed to support the structure until the bulkhead comes out in 2026. The divers were also able to remove all 36 trash rack screens from the intake and bring them to the surface where they were inspected. They will also be sandblasted and coated with a special coating designed to prevent aquatic invasive species. A temporary trash rack was custom built and installed to ensure the intake remains protected from debris. As the microtunnel interior coating was wrapping up, Granite began to excavate around the existing concrete tunnel. This tunnel was built in the early 1940s. The new bypass pipe will eventually split into 2 separate pipes and tie directly into the 2 existing penstocks. To make this connection, about 24 feet of concrete tunnel needs to be demolished. Once the final grade was reached, a specialty wire saw cutting contractor was brought in to cut and remove the concrete in sections, each weighing between 6,000 and 10,000 pounds. A few specialty tools were brought in to perform the final cutting and chipping of the existing tunnel. This helped create a nice smooth surface from where the existing 1940 tunnel floor could join with the mat foundation of the new 2025 vault. Formwork and rebar for the foundation were soon delivered, assembled in place, and inspected. With all the winter precautions in place, Granite poured the 2-foot thick concrete vault foundation slab on December 19th, just in time for it to cure over the holidays. The Deer Creek Intake Project also includes some high-performance double offset butterfly valves that were manufactured in Mannheim, Germany by VAG. In August, engineers from Provo River Water Users Association, Advanced Engineering and Environmental Services, and Granite were in Mannheim, Germany for additional factory acceptance testing, and all was successful. The valves were boxed and shipped from Germany, and in December they arrived on site in Utah. We are really proud of all the work we've accomplished in 2023 and 2024. We face a lot of unique challenges in the field, but with all the talent, experience, and partnering relationships we have on our team, we never lost focus of delivering quality. We are really excited about the next steps of this project and partnership. We want to thank all those who have made the progress possible and continue to make this project a huge success.
Thank you. Hopefully that was enjoyable. This project was brought about because of guard gates. You heard the 1940 construction, and so our infrastructure is about 80 plus years old, and things have to be replaced over time. And so that's what this project has been about. This next year, they'll be completing the rest of the tie-in vault, putting the piping. They're currently working on the piping right now and the grading. They'll be tying into that, putting a receiving pipe on the end of the MTBM bypass pipe, and then they will be bypassing Deer Creek flow through this new bypass line and allow us to be able to get in and refurbish some existing guard gates. And those guard gates are what's holding the reservoir back in the chamber, guard gate chamber, from the intake, the existing intake. And so this refurbishment will be taking place this next year, within the next year, and give us a reliable source and be able to provide us the means to continue to provide water to our downstream users. Any questions at all?
What's the cost? Like, what's this project's cost?
It's $100 million
I was
project.
going to say 120, so I was...
You're pretty close. I have a big question. How did you come up with the term micro-tunneling?
Because of the size?
It's massive.
Yeah, that's a good question. We had a similar one. Yeah, they'll go up to the 10, 12 foot for that still micro. So while we were in Germany checking out the valves and doing the testing on that, they took us to where they build those MTBM, those boring machines, and we witnessed a 32-inch driving through for tunnels and stuff that the trains and vehicles will go through. So that ours would be considered pretty small compared to those. Oh, sorry. 32 foot, yes. Thank you.
Oh, what were your funding sources for that $100 million project?
So we have agreements with Central in place. So Central runs Jordanelle. They pay a percentage of that. The association bonded for the first $7 million, and then we're able to get a loan for another $69 million from the Board of Water Resources. Drinking Water has also pitched in some funding for loan monies, low interest loan monies, and then we have another $4 million that we're working on for a grant.
Okay. Is that a state or federal grant?
It's a state. Yes.
I've got a question. So you repeatedly referred to these as intake pipes. Is it the water that flows out of the reservoir into the canal? Is that what you mean by intake?
Yeah, very, very good question. So the current intake tower that as you drive around Deer Creek, this tower is about 47.5 feet tall, but it's under about 90 feet of water. at a full elevation. So if we ever see that tower, that's a bad day for us. We've had some droughts, but not that bad. That tower is the intake tower, but it goes through the outlet works and feeds our power plant and then distributes that to the Provo River. So if we don't let it out the bottom of the reservoir, the only way that we can let that water out is through the spillway at higher elevations.
Okay, so I grew up just seeing the spillway. So
Yeah.
these are the pipes that drain it out into the river.
That's correct.
Okay.
And when the dam was constructed, they didn't have a means of isolating that outlet works.
Can you start at the very beginning? So you have a dam there. So it's a power generator also, so it has a power element.
Yeah, so the dam and reservoir is part of the original Provo River project, and that dam and reservoir was completed in 1941. Reservoir was filled up, and then the power plant came in. This is all reclamation owned. As the association, as Provo River water users, we manage the project, but the dam or the power plant came in and was operational in 1959. And the power plant it generates power from the water used from the water, the demand downstream, but it is secondary. So water supply is primary, and whenever we can generate power from that supply, that
And
is
who
a
gets
secondary.
that power? It's like who's the source that buys that power?
So we have Jeff's the best one on for that. WAPA Power and Rocky Mountain Power have a summer and a winter usage.
So now that water's going to come down the Provo River. When does it, and I don't know if there's a percentage, it gets in the Murdoch Canal. How much of Provo River goes in the Murdoch Canal versus just stays as a river?
Yeah, very good question. Some of those numbers change. So we've only been seeing about 125 CFS coming down the river. I mean, that's pretty good. Times that by 450 gallons per minute, and you can see the flows. But during the April 15th is typically when we start our irrigation season. We were a little bit ahead with the warmer weather, and so our river commissioner initiated that. But right at the base, Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy, they'll take water right directly into their pipe works. The Murdoch is located down at the mouth. Upstream, in between Metro and the Murdoch, we have the Olmsted, and that feeds Central's water treatment plant. So at different times of the year, we have different flows. We can see upwards of 2,000 CFS coming down, and that'll have to come through the spillway as well. But those flows generate. Hopefully, we'll be seeing some runoff coming down in the next couple months here to be able to help supply reservoirs and fill up all those downstream.
So I didn't know. So you have, if you want to say Salt Lake, they have. Is it something? Where do they get their water? Because we have the Murdoch Canal. How do they get their water? Does it go down to the Jordan River?
That Murdoch is one of the sources, and it feeds its gravity flow all the way down that.
Okay, and then
to the point of the mountain.
So go to the point of the mountain, then does it divert to go up to Salt Lake there?
Yes, there's treatment plants that it feeds.
So the Murdoch Canal is not only for, if you want to say Provo River, it's also for the Salt Lake, or the whatever they're called, the Sandy Aqueducts or whatever that is. That right?
Yeah,
About a lot of shares.
they're all shareholders within the Provo River Association. Yeah. Just got some other.
Well, as Brad was saying, and as you understand, we have shareholders, and our largest shareholder is Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy. They own 62% of the shares of stock in the association. And they have two pipelines, or two ways to get water into treatment plants. Brad mentioned the one that they take out right at the dam, and that's the Salt Lake Aqueduct. That comes through Highland City, somewhere right through here, and goes through through South Mountain and goes to their water treatment plant at the mouth of Little Cottonwood. But they also have their Point of the Mountain treatment plant that they put in about 15 years ago, or maybe 20 years ago now. And they feed that water treatment plant off of the Provo Reservoir Canal, or Provo River Aqueduct, now that it's enclosed. And so we feed water to them. We also feed water to Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District off of the enclosed canal. They are They own the majority of our second largest shareholder. Provo Reservoir Water Users Company is an irrigation company, and I believe you own stock in Provo Reservoir Irrigation Company, as well as stock from the association. And so you get water through Provo Reservoir and through Provo River, both through the PRC. And so that's, those are where a lot of the water goes.
So Jeff, and I asked you this earlier, so we have, and I understand we're talking water, but it's always this, so we have the AF Canyon that has Lehigh shares and American Fork Creek share, or American Fork shares.
And Pleasant Grove.
And
And
Pleasant
those are going to, and Pleasant Grove, they're going to flow out of AF Canyon. Then we have, I think they're stored Provo River water shares. Is that right? They're
Yeah,
stored shares?
we have shares like Jeff was explaining. We have Provo Res shares, so Provo Reservoir and also Provo River shares. So they're different classifications.
And then how
of
we
water.
will get your water is we have, we're going to take it out. Like we're building a new pump house, which we all know about. They're on 6,000 West. And then we have, how many pump houses do we have that we take water out of the Murdoch Canal?
2 currently operating and the one that we're working
bring
on right
on.
now.
And that's how we'll get the shares from you of our water, the stored water coming out of Deer Creek.
Right, and some of the irrigation companies are also taking shares out of other turnouts along through Highland City. I forget the names of all of the small companies, but we deliver at several locations through Highland City to smaller irrigation shareholders of Provo Reservoir Water Users Company. So it's really kind of a convoluted group of ways to get water, and we try to keep track of that all for you. So that's this is the single biggest project that we've got going, and the question that came up that we were requested to come and kind of address is why are the share assessments going up? Well, this project is one of them. We call it the intake project. It originally started as a revision of the original intake, and so that's how the name was developed, the Deer Creek Intake Project. But it through value engineering, it morphed itself into a new intake and a new pipeline to take water out of the reservoir. And so it's really a new Deer Creek Intake Project, but it kept the name Deer Creek Intake Project. So that's and that's one of the big reasons why the share assessments are going up. There's another project that we're going to do out at Jordan Narrows for the Provo Reservoir Water Users Company.
Where's Jordan Narrows?
That's down in where the Jordan River goes through at the point of the mountain, down in the bottom. They call that Jordan Narrows, where it goes through that narrowing of the canyon there. And we deliver water to 4 canals on the east, I guess that's kind of the southwest side of the valley. I get all turned around with north, south, east, and west out there because it's kind of convoluted. But in any case, we deliver to 4 canals out there, and we replaced the discharge lines from our pipeline underneath the river and up to the canals on 2 of those canals already. And we've got a 3rd pipeline up the hillside that goes up to 2 canals that are near Camp Williams. And that line has been in there since the 1940s also. And we're anticipating replacing that line this fall and next spring. And that's $1 million project. It's a baby when compared to the intake project. But the assessments went up on the Provo Reservoir shares that the city owns as well, and that assessment that goes with that. So those are the 2 reasons why share assessments have gone up that have affected Highland City.
So is water flowing in the Murdoch Canal now?
It is, yeah. We started making deliveries on the 11th.
On the 11th. And I assume you made sure all your manhole covers were sealed?
Yes, you're of interest to you. We developed a comprehensive startup procedure this year, and our guys were trained on it, and so every nut, every bolt, every valve was checked all the way from start to finish this year before we put water in the pipeline.
I was thinking, because here it is the 15th. What day was it the 13th of April last year when it all happened?
About then, yeah. We were filling the pipe to start deliveries. We anticipate starting on the 15th of April normally, and then the river commissioner can dictate whether it's a little before or a little after that, depending on the weather and the delivery demands.
And, as you brought up, this is about those who are aware, this is the flooding that we had in the homes off the Murdoch Canal. We appreciated, I know that, if you look a year ago, it didn't look, now we're looking a year later. We appreciate what Provo River, as well as others who kind of helped through that situation. It was unfortunate what happened to some residents with that flooding, but here we are a year later, and I hope those residents, I felt like they were treated fair. So
we tried very hard to work with the residents and make sure that they were treated fairly through the process. It's always hard to determine what is fair and what is reasonable. And we worked well with the contractor and with the city, and during the incident itself, we had help from other cities around here that contributed manpower and machinery to help us eliminate or alleviate as much as we could of the flooding issue.
So we appreciate you. Then also, this is the same company that we were dealing with the Canterbury, if you remember, on some encroachments that we had there, where we sold property we didn't own. And we appreciated, as we've also worked, so it's kind of surprising. Also, you haven't had, and also we have 2 events this year that we've had to work with Provo River. Now I have a question, just, as we look at some of the funding, it appears, and maybe I've got to get a bigger picture here, but you have kind of, and maybe I'm looking at the Utah County, Salt Lake County, you have the Utah County project, and I can see everything at Jordanelle benefits everyone that's in the district. But as you start getting down into the Jordan Narrows or things, that seems to be more benefiting that it's north. Do you separate any of that budget aspect, or is it just all one big budget pot?
Well, the association is one big budget pie. When the project is originally built, all of the shareholders, whether they were in Woodland or Salt Lake City, shared equally proportionate to their share ownership in the cost of the project. And so a lot of our projects are distributed based on share ownership because it benefits the company as a whole. Things like the canal enclosure, there were shareholders that just simply did not benefit from that project. And so we have a Provo Reservoir, Provo River Aqueduct Committee and a Provo River Aqueduct Assessment that separates some of the shareholders that derived no benefit at all from that part of the project. And they are not obligated to the cost of that project, while those that are benefiting from it are covering that cost. And so it was broken down similar to the breakdown that Brad gave you on this intake project. Those that have the capability bonded for that project. Provo Reservoir Water Users Company issued bonds. The association issued bonds. Central Utah, I believe, issued some bonds because they assisted in that project. The enclosure project, Central Utah, was able to get a water conservation grant that paid $75 million of that project. They paid for 50% of the project because we were able to conserve or save seepage water and evaporation loss water. We had to commit to 8,000 acre feet a year minimum to return back to the Central Utah project as part of the conservation program that they got that money from. And so that's why they were able to get $75 million to contribute towards our enclosure project. So we work very hard to try and find sources of money that impact shareholders the least. And we tried for 2 years to get a state legislative grant of $11 million so that we wouldn't have to bond for that last $11 million. It got right down to the end of the legislature those 2 years, and our project was kicked out. This year we asked for only $4 million, and it got right down to the last minute at the legislature, and they did grant us the $4 million, but they put strings on it. And the requirement is that we have to find 35,000 acre feet of water from the association that we can deliver to the Great Salt Lake. And if we can do that, they will give us the grant. You know, we can't pay a contractor on a wish. And so we have had to bond for the full $100 million of the project. We do have the $4 million grant, and I spent an hour and a half with the Department of Natural Resources this afternoon trying to come up with a way that we can satisfy that pull to get water to the Great Salt Lake without disadvantaging our shareholders or violating Utah water law or, you know, whatever else there is out there, so that we can get that $4 million grant, and in which case we will turn back $4 million worth of bonds that we've got. It won't lessen our assessments, but it will shorten the repayment period. So we're still working, trying to save money on the project as best we can, but we get thrown curveballs every once in a while, and the strings attached to this grant are quite hard to find a way to make it work, and we're going to keep trying. But
Let me ask an ancillary question. So, how is our water supply this year? I understand at the end of February we're behind, but we've had a wet March. Are we at average, or?
we're a little above average in the high elevations. The low elevations have all melted out now. The upper elevations are a little above average still. It remains to be seen how much of that high elevation snow is going to get through the mid elevation areas that dried out. We'll lose some water to the soil moisture as it goes through those mid elevation areas. We aren't seeing big runs in the river starting yet, but we are in runoff mode. You know, we're watching our collection up in Camas and from the Duchesne Tunnel constantly all week long to make sure that we can keep all that water coming in. I anticipate that we're going to have a full allocation again this year, because we did have 50,000 acre feet from last year that was not allocated. We were able to give 100% allocation last year and still had 50,000 acre feet in the reservoir that was unallocated. And so that's available to be allocated this year. So we really only need a partial runoff this year to still be able to give a full allocation. Where that'll hit us hard is next year. We won't have that amount of carryover water to
Make a difference.
allocate.
And that kind of comes to my question. So, and this, because water's so confusing, we have irrigation shares in Dry Creek, or how much water would we say? How many acre feet do we have that's stored? I mean, like at the beginning of the year, how much? Jeff, what would we say acre feet we have stored up at Deer Creek that's supposed to be ours, if you want to say Highlands?
It's actually not stored in Deer Creek. It's in Jordanelle. Most of our
Okay.
water gets stored in Jordanelle, and they let it out as we ask for the water. Deer Creek's more of like a bypass reservoir, from my understandings.
If you're taking water through the Central Utah Project, it's stored in Jordanelle. If it's Deer Creek shares, then it's stored in Deer
Right.
Creek.
So do we have Jordanelle or Deer Creek?
We have both.
Okay, so now let me ask you. So I've heard, like, when we had the drought a couple years ago,
3 years.
So as we come through, so I'm just going to say arbitrary. Let's assume we have, would 10,000 acre water be correct? I mean, so let's assume we have 10,000, but we only bring during the year 5,000 of that down, because you just talked about storage. Do we get credit that we've stored 5,000 acre from last year that we could then pull at a later year? Because that's why you remember when that was all going on, Jeff? That's why I kept understanding. We didn't pull it all down because we were trying to save just in case the next year when it was, you remember that? I think all of us, we were worried about that drought, so we were storing some.
Right.
Am I understanding it correct?
Yeah, there is a storage component to it. The one caveat to that is if Deer Creek spills, then we lose that stored water.
What do you mean by spilled? Where it's full and it goes over?
When it goes over the spillway.
Okay.
That's New Year water. You know, if we don't get enough water in a new year to push out all of the holdover, then the holdover will move from year to year.
So if we can keep banking, if you want to say our 5,000, we said, hey, we haven't taken it for 10 years. We could keep that 5,000 there for 10 years till we pull.
Until last year, when we got enough new water to push everybody's holdover out. And so
It's a
you
reset.
started over again. It's a reset button. And this year, if you conserve and don't use all of your 10,000 acre feet, that water will be here next spring. And if we have a poor year next year in the runoff, that water will stay in the reservoir. And you'll still have that 5,000 acre feet, and you'll get added to that whatever the allocation is. If it's 100% allocation, you'll get another 10,000. If it's an 80%, you'll get 8,000. So
I have another question. So I'm kind of looking from a sky-high view down in things. I've got a patient that works for CUP, and he expressed some concern about the fact that there's a lot of political pressure to drain down the reservoirs to put it in the Great Salt Lake. And I've kind of struggled with that. I understand the reasons for that, I agree, but we have explosive growth along the Wasatch Front. I'm wondering, is there a lot of debate going on about that? I mean, it seems kind of crazy to drain our reservoirs to put it in the lake. I guess it replenishes things. I don't know.
hence the negotiations with the state that I've been involved with. We have obligations to our shareholders. We're a private nonprofit company, and I have a legal obligation as the general manager and secretary treasurer of that corporation to meet the demands of the contracts that I have with my shareholders. And so I can't just go to the state and say, I'm going to send 5,000 acre feet out of Deer Creek that's unallocated water, because that water really, even though it's not assigned to the shareholders, it belongs to the shareholders. And so, and any water that's been allocated, this 5,000 acre feet that you've conserved, it belongs to Highland City. It doesn't belong to me. It's your water, and you can decide how to use it. And so, Central and us, Weber Basin, there's actually 8 federal projects that feed into the Great Salt Lake. And all of us are feeling pressure to send water to the Great Salt Lake. But there are a lot of different rules and regulations that we have to follow before we can just send water to the Great Salt Lake. And the legislature can stand up there and pass legislation that says you will send X amount of water to the Great Salt Lake, but they don't tell you how to legally do it. They don't tell you what parts of water law will need to be changed to allow that to happen. They just stand up there and give you a mandate, and then we're expected to try and find a way to make it work, and oftentimes we can't legally make it work. And so
get prepared. What I'm hearing from legislators, when I talk to one of them at the end of the session, the anticipation is next year is going to be all about water shares. That they're going to be looking at water shares that we require from developers. So it's going to be coming in push from the developer side. And I think it's going to also be this Great Salt Lake. So that leaves my next question. Help me understand, and this is, I've lived here all my life. I've lived up in the Salt Lake County. What is so important about preserving Great Salt Lake? I mean, I'm saying, okay, you can't really water ski on it. You can sailboat on it. You can't really go recreate on it. Is it that it creates storms and gives moisture? What is the sacredness about the Great Salt Lake? And that's just an education.
Yeah, there's a couple of different sources of this desire to save the Great Salt Lake. We do get a lot of what you call lake effect snow. The Cottonwood Canyons get a ton of snow because of the Great Salt Lake. That doesn't get over the mountains into the Uintas where we can catch it in our reservoirs. And so during the wintertime, you hear that snowbirds received 10 feet of snow out of the last 3 storms, and we got 2 feet at Trial Lake in the Uintas. So that's the Great Salt Lake effect. And they can't catch that. They can, when it runs down, it runs back to the Great Salt Lake. They treat what they can. But the other issue with the Great Salt Lake, you hear people talk about the Salton Sea in California, where they've pulled all of the water out of these lake beds and dried them up. They're terminal beds, they dry up. They have monumental dust problems. There's heavy metals. There's all sorts of things in that dust that blows off of these dead lake beds. And now they've got an environmental issue that they're spending millions and millions of dollars on every year to mitigate the dust issue. And so the push by the legislature is to, well, let's avoid that if we can. But, you know, like I said, it's easy to stand up there and make legislation, and it's a lot harder to make it actually happen when you get on the ground.
So we just hope for wet years.
Yep. Mother Nature this is the opinion of Jeff Budge. The only thing that's going to save the Great Salt Lake is Mother Nature. You know, we can send water, they could drain Strawberry Reservoir, 1,000,000 acre feet, send it to the Great Salt Lake, and it would evaporate in about 3 months because of the high evaporation rate on Great Salt Lake. The only way to get more water there is to get more water in the mountains and get it down there. And, you know, we'll do everything we can to help water get there. You know, we'll conserve, we'll tear up, you know, rip to strip and whatever else the keyword is, the buzzword is of the day. But the big scheme of things, they're just one drop in the bucket. And if you get enough drops, you make an impact. But the big thing is going to be Mother Nature giving us water.
Oh, good. Okay, I have to just ask one last question.
Okay.
When I watched the video and I saw the project, did you guys ever do any gold dredging while you're up there?
Right.
I mean, it looked like a dredge was going on and all that. So did you ever do gold mining?
The contractor may have done that. It'd be nice to see some of those project costs offset.
Yes, I agree. Is there any other
There's
questions?
got to be some minerals there.
If not, we really appreciate. Once again, I just want to tell you, up there. Oh, Brittany, did you have a question? Oh, appreciate once again. Last year with the situation we had with those homeowners with the flood, and I really appreciate you working with us on the Canterbury issue where we had made some errors. We need to work with those residents. Those residents, Brittany, Kim, I think they felt like it was a good solution with that licensure agreement that we were able to work out. So thank you on that.
Yeah, I think we're just about finished there. Dave's been working on the last bits of the license agreements and things, and so we're close on that one.
Yeah, you did. So thank you.
We are very proud of this project. So this project can be found on YouTube. You can share that with your friends and neighbors. Yeah, Deer Creek Intake Project. Our board was very proactive because we talk about these droughts and high years. So in the past few years, we've seen extremes on all ends. And they were able to see, hey, let's do this construction in the wet. And that's what you're seeing on the video.
Are you going to do any grand opening to kind of show the public at all how this all worked out, or has that already happened?
We've been doing a lot of that. We had our kickoff meeting 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so there will be some celebration.
Yeah, we'll have some kind of a celebration, ribbon cutting kind of a thing.
Sounds good. Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now I'll go back to item number 3. And if you, on item number 3, there's a 3D. If it's okay, we'd like to pull that and have that as an actual voting item. But we do have 3A, which is the meeting minutes from March 4th. We have 3B, which is the meeting minutes from April 1st. And then we have 3C, which is a approval and ratification of large purchases. Is there any of those that anyone would like to pull?
I would like to pull 3A.
Okay. Any others? Okay, then we'll take a motion on 3, B, and C.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items 3B, approval of meeting minutes, and 3C, approval of or ratification of large purchases.
Second.
I have Kim as the motion and Doug as the second. Are we up for electronic? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So on 3C, I'm not 100% what we're approving there. How big are purchases, David? I mean, we discussed it back and forth. I wasn't sure reading through the...
We discussed it a few meetings ago
Right.
that our purchasing policy currently says that the council needs to approve any purchase over $25,000. We'd like to modify that policy, but that's going to take some time and research and work. So in the meantime, to be safe, we wanted to bring any purchase that we make that's over $25,000 during a month. We're going to bring it to a meeting for you to either
Okay, so
approve
that's
or
what I
ratify.
understood, but I wasn't quite sure what we were... Okay.
Yep.
So these are items that are already currently in our budget that we reviewed during the budget process that was earmarked that are coming up. Now, we didn't know the vendor at the time of budget.
Correct.
And so-
Yeah, a lot of them have been approved in the budget and a contract approved. And then this is the third time you would be seeing it as the actual check was cut.
Just since we see the Big T recreation, I assume that that's the full cost for the Ninja course? Or is that just phase
I
two?
believe it's the full cost.
It is the full cost.
Okay, we have a motion by Kim, a second by Doug. Any further discussion that needs to happen before vote? Okay.
Are we doing electronic? I've got to work with Stephanie here. I can't get logged in here.
Okay, so Doug, or Scott, would you go ahead and just vote on that?
I'm a yes.
Okay, we can go to reveal. That passes 5-0. We'll now go to item number 3D, no, or 3A, I believe it was for you, Doug, right?
Yeah, I have one correction onto the minutes from March 4th. On the top of page 9, the draft minutes state that Manuel Bueno said on the area north of the church that was marked as open space. I checked the video, and what he said was north of the buildings there to the church, which now just says open space. So I propose to strike the words north of the church and replace them with the words immediately south of the church.
Which
I've
is
checked that.
totally correct.
I've checked that in the video, and I believe that Stephanie confirmed it.
Okay, with that, do you want to do a motion on that?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from March 4th, 2025 as amended.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Doug, second by Scott. We'll go ahead. I assume, do we not have a slide for that? So we'll just start down here with you, Brittany.
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
and Ron.
Yes.
5-0. We'll now go on to item number 3D, which is an action item. Now, they have me down and they have Stephanie down. And I guess we could, do we have anything that we need to go through? I can kind of discuss this if we
Just
need.
quickly, so I'm pulling this off consent only because as we were talking about this with staff, we realized a better way to do this would be not to appoint individuals, but positions to this, and so that
Correct.
you don't have to keep doing, the council doesn't have to keep doing this. So we've changed the motion. Will you go forward a couple of slides, Rob? So I just nope, keep going.
Just to be, yeah.
One more, probably.
So instead of
Maybe
putting the
two.
person's name in, just to have the position, correct?
There we go. So this is a new recommended motion for you, just to focus on the position rather than the person.
And I believe why some of this is coming up, there's times when we're at, like, Mountain Land Association of Government, they will have different individuals. If a mayor can't be there, they'll have city council members. Well, the question always comes, is that person been authorized to vote on behalf of the city to do that? And then I know that at the TAC committee here just recently, there was motions that were made, and it was like a really divided motion where, I mean, it passed with one vote, and they came up and said, well, hold it. Some of those people voting, we don't know if they had the authority to vote. And so there was some confusion. And so I believe that they're now asking every city to go forth and appoint who's supposed to be there in their place and have the authority to vote when the motions come up. A lot of this is dealing with all the road projects going on in the county where they're funding a lot of the different metropolitan road issues. So with that,
I'll make a motion. I move that City Council appoint the mayor pro temp as the Highland City MPO board alternate and the city engineer as a Highland City TAC representative.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Kim, second by Ron. Any discussion on that item?
Rob, one, maybe two questions. This feels more like a resolution than a motion to me. Something that wants to be a resolution rather than a motion. Is a motion really a fair game way of going out? And two, the motion that I see doesn't say that we're setting it up so that it will always be the mayor pro tem and the city engineer. It reads to me as if we are at the moment appointing those two people.
We could do it by resolution, but it's more just how formal do we want to make it. I'm not worried about just having it by motion. I think you can read it either way, to be honest. I think previously we said, Kim Rodella as mayor pro tem as the the city MPO board alt, and by removing the names, the intent is, especially as we've discussed, that we're making these what we call ex officio positions, where if you hold these offices, you are automatically going to serve as these other offices as well. So I'm not concerned with this as it's presented.
Would anyone object to changing the motion to, as the Highland City MPO board alternate, as an ex officio role, and the city engineer as the Highland City TAC representative as an ex officio role? Just to be clear that we're intending this to be an ongoing thing.
Describe ex officio just to make sure we understand what that's.
Ex officio is one of those Latin terms that lawyers like to use because it makes us sound more important than we are. It just means that because you hold one office, you hold this other office related to it. So the mayor holds certain offices that are appointed for the Highland City mayor. On MAG, we have mayors that serve as a board, which means whoever serves as mayor automatically serves on that board as well. That's all that ex officio means. It means if you serve in one, you also serve in this.
I'm sure everyone else understood that. I just thought, let's get it clear. We're not talking about an espresso or something like that. So, just everyone here gets espresso. So anyway, that's just me trying to be. So anyway, with that, we'll go ahead. We have a motion once again by Kim, and then second by Ron. But you'd like to make an alternate motion? Does anyone have a concern with the alternate motion with ex officio?
I'll second the alternate.
So are we going to have a new one?
What we have frequently done in the past with something like that is, because we run a bridged set of Robert's rules, that as long as the motion maker and the seconder are okay, we simply incorporate it.
Are you two okay with incorporating that into your motion?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so now that officio is going to be part of that motion. So we'll now start with you, Scott.
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
And Brittany?
Yes.
That passes 5-0. We'll now move on to our next item, which is item number 4A, which is the ordinance of the PO zone text amendment. We're going to have Rob Patterson who will discuss a little bit about that and maybe some options we can look at.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is not meant more as to not bring up the entire discussion again, but just essentially to address what do we do with the text amendment application that Patterson Homes submitted a year and a half ago, kind of as we're still working through this process. So not to get too deep in the weeds on the PO zone or the text amendment, but just as a reminder for everyone, this is the PO zone, Highland Boulevard, little place next to Lone Peak. We have a lot of history. The long story the PO zone made short is that the PO zone has never been applied properly once in any development within the PO zone. So we've discussed this several times, trying to make it work, trying to expand it. There's the original master plan. I don't have a current master plan that encompasses all of, at least even the Highland Boulevard, so I kind of cobbled together 4 different plans that have been adopted over the years. To make this short, the council sent back a couple of questions to the commission, asking the commission to clarify some details on it. The commission did not make any recommendations specifically to those questions. Rather, the commission said, great questions. We want to spend more time working on this. And also, we want staff to lead that discussion and any changes to the PO zone rather than having it be an applicant, private property owner-led process. So that staff takes the lead on drafting the code, gathering input, talking to the property owners, the developers, and other stakeholders. And so it's staff-led. With that recommendation, I wanted to bring it back to the council to say, well, you didn't get a new recommendation from the Planning Commission, so what do you want to do with that application that's just kind of sitting out there at this point? I think from what I heard from council before, and what I have definitely heard from the commission, is there's a desire to clean up the PO zone and make it work because it hasn't been. The question is really, do you just want to kind of wait for the planning commission to give you something again? Do you want Patterson Homes to still be leading that process, or do you want, as the planning commission recommended, for staff to lead that process going forward? So these are the this is the slide that's really important. It's just, commission wants to work on this. They said staff should work on it, essentially. So the council could deny the text amendment application that has been submitted saying, Patterson Homes, we appreciate your work. We're just going to deny that. Not because we don't want to work on this. It's more of, it's not your application any longer. You don't get what you have drafted isn't going to be adopted, but we were going to adopt something, but it will be a city-led process instead. What questions can I answer on this?
So let me, and I think we need to look big picture. So if you're trying to do commercial inside a city, so we're looking at this zone, for most commercial guys, so when you're doing a big subdivision, they'll come in and ask for zone changes and things that way. Most commercial users want things already zoned so they know that that's where the business is supposed to be, and this is, if you want it to be office, if you want a warehouse, if you want it retail. And so they're looking for you to signal to them, this is where we'd like to have it in the city. However, when I understand our PO zone, specifically up here with Patterson, every time that they're trying to do a building, it's now a one-off. They're coming in, we're having discussions specifically about that building. That might feel comfortable for our residents because they get to have a lot of input on that one, where if it was just if we do a PO zone, then they just have to meet that zone on any of the zones we've put in. Does that make sense to residents? And so if we go about changing it, it makes it more friendly for the commercial developer to know what to do. If we keep it current and don't make any changes, everything's a one-off. And as we're seeing right now with Patterson, they probably are worn out and they're going to pull back and not move forward, and they'll come again. It's a slow, tedious process for them.
So can I just talk a little bit about the history, though? 20 some odd years ago when we set up the PO zone on the west side of the city, I think there was a lot of thought that went into, we would like the architecture to stay kind of consistent and look residential because it's the entrance in the city. Where things got filed up, I think, a little bit is when we declared across from Lone Peak being a PO zone. And we changed architecture in there, and there was no discussion whatsoever of the architectural demands on the other side of the city. And so that has kind of made things kind of crazy. And then, we went through all the debate in 2019 on the flex buildings and got input from the neighborhood, and there was a big compromise. The 2021, I don't know how that building got passed, and nobody on the council can remember even talking about that building, but it's a totally different architecture. And that's kind of the history. So, I kind of struggle with this because, and Pattersons are a wonderful addition to the city. I don't want to say anything bad about them. I think they're great. But at the same time, I think originally there was an attempt to kind of make the architecture look consistent and nice over there. And with the change over the years, it's just constantly coming in, let's change the architecture, let's change the architecture. And then it upsets all the residents around there because they're trying to maintain that. And so I'm not so sure, because a lot of these changes are based on the Lone Peak side where we allowed different architecture, but it's a different part of the city with a modern high school across the street. And I'm not so sure, do we need to have, can't you have like PO Zone A and PO Zone B and kind of stay with a consistent architecture over there to make it look really nice? Now that's the problem because architecture has evolved. Now there's all these flat roof homes and all this stuff, but it looks really eclectic, and is that what we want? Because they're putting a flat roof building just north of the storage shed, and that's kind of what they want to do on the other side. And that's what upsets other people because you can go up to the 35 feet with a flat roof, and it's totally different than the other architecture. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think part of it is I think you've got two different PO zones in the city, and I don't know why you can't have two different ones. Does that make sense, or is that just totally illegal?
That makes complete sense. We could have a different zone. Part of the solution to this, maybe that shouldn't be PO zone over there. It should be, expansion of the CR zone or the C1 zone or the residential professional zone, which would solve some of these issues. It wouldn't solve, we have the church up on Highland Boulevard. We have property that's zoned there. It's not really designed. But at least we could make that all side consistent and do something different. Right. So this is kind of getting to the point of their application is putting a Band-Aid on a lot of this, which I do appreciate their effort to try to fix some of the PO zone. But there's a lot of other options we could look at if the city wants to really kind of take the charge and fix the PO zone, including whether that property over by Lone Peak should even be zoned PO. We can do that as staff. It'll just take more time, and it's less of a Patterson application, more of just a city trying to fix its own zoning regulation.
I think what Scott, you're bringing up actually makes sense. We're going, okay, because what our issue has been is we call both areas PO, and we've allowed a very modern type of there, and you have the other, and I'm going, we possibly should separate. We shouldn't have called it the PO zone, the professional office zone. That's probably where we're getting
I mean,
caught.
are two variations on it. I just think we ought to turn it to the staff, let them look at this pretty carefully, and kind of. But I think the goal over there was on the west side of the city was to make kind of a cohesive architecture, and I'm not opposed to that. I mean, I don't like to dictate to developers all the time, but at the same time, I think as a council, we have an obligation to make our city look nice, and stuff. So I kind of struggle with this.
Brittany, what do you think?
So we sent it back to Planning Commission because we were interested in what they had to say, and their suggestion was to take Commissioner Abbott's recommendations and let staff be in charge of kind of leading this process, and I agree with Planning Commission.
So what the recommendation would be to deny it and give staff direction to what to do.
So that would be, yes, deny the actual application from Patterson Homes so that it's no longer them driving this.
Yeah.
It's not saying we don't want to change this, and we'll definitely incorporate them in the discussions going forward, as well as other, residents nearby. But staff will come up with some options and talk with council and commission about different things we can do to make this work for the city.
So do you think you can make some of the suggestions from Commissioner Abbott work? I thought he had some good ones.
No, I think there's I liked a lot of those things, and maybe it's just we need to refine those and workshop them a bit, but they are in the realm of what I have seen in other cities of higher level architectural guidelines, where you have very specific massing and story requirements and breaking up of facades and things. To the mayor's point earlier, developers, maybe they'll kind of grumble about having so many restrictions, but at least if they can read that, they know, okay, give it to an architect, give us a building that meets all of these things, and they can do that. What they don't want to do is want to build a building with potential tenants and have to wait for a year for a city to decide whether that's allowed or not. They want to know, I can build this or I can't.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the City Council accept the findings displayed on the screen and deny the code amendment for the PO zone as applied for by Patterson Homes and direct staff to draft code changes for the PO zone as recommended by the Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
A motion by Doug, second by Scott. Is there any other clarification or questions or discussion?
One quick item of discussion or note or whatever that I'd just like to second what Rob said, that I appreciate the work that Patterson has done with us on this and anticipate that they will be involved in discussions going forward. This isn't in any stretch an objection to what they're doing or any dislike of anything there. That I think this is just acknowledging the reality of what we're doing going forward.
So no other further discussion. We'll start with you here, Doug, on the vote.
We have online voting again.
Oh, we do have electronic voting up?
Yes.
Okay. So you can electronic vote. And everyone's in. That is 5-0. We'll now move on to 4B, which is an action item. It's fast cast voting option, and we'll have Stephanie Cottle discuss this, our city recorder.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. So on March 24th, the city recorders in Utah County received an email from Aaron Davidson, who is the Utah County clerk, and he suggested or gave us the opportunity to participate in FastCast voting. On the screen here, you have a list of what is FastCast voting. His proposal was that cities would be allowed during the early voting period. We would be given the opportunity to accept ballots under this FastCast voting method, which basically means that a voter who has their ballot that has been mailed to them, they would vote the ballot just like they normally would at home. They would seal it up. They would bring it into the city office. We would have a poll pad where we would verify their signature. They would sign the poll pad, and we would kind of verify who they are, and then we would maintain custody of those ballots until the county picks them up. They did a trial run of this at voting last time. There were some concerns with that. On the screen here is kind of what I just mentioned. Rob, do you mind just flipping to the next screen? Staff, we have some concerns with this. My primary concern with this is ballot security. Utah County would not be out picking up our ballots or these fast cast ballots every day. It was going to be on an as they could arrive basis. I personally am not comfortable keeping ballots here in City Hall. The other concerns that we had was perception. Holding ballots and accepting ballots is a big responsibility, and I didn't want to give anyone the perception that maybe Highland City employees might have any influence over the election. And then finally, it's going to take quite a bit of staff time to be trained and to administer this. So those are just my concerns. Just on a note that I didn't put on there, I did reach out to the Central Utah Recorders Association, and I asked which cities are actually going to be doing this option. Not a single one of them are doing this.
I don't feel like we need to spend a lot of discussion time on this. There's already concerns with it. Not a single city is doing it. There's procedural issues, liability issues, election transparency issues. So I recommend that we deny the fast cast option for early voting.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
I understand where the staff and everybody's coming from. Was the idea behind this is that it would save county staff time from verifying all the signatures and also allow people who kind of like to vote in person, kind of a hybrid form of voting? I mean, because there's a lot of people that worry about, mail-in ballots and signing, and I think the county does a good job, but there were a lot of ballots that weren't cured, and that was in their discussion. Whereas if you walk in and you show a valid signature and ID, it seems like that was an attempt to kind of form a hybrid. I mean, I'd just like to understand the pros on this, because there are some pros.
I think one of the pros that they were trying to do is just give people another option to turn in their ballots, another way that they could turn in their ballots during that early voting period. We had some substantial lines during our last election. Of course, it was a presidential election, so that says a lot. But we did have some people waiting in lines. So I think part of it was they were looking for a way to reduce the lines and offer individuals another way to vote prior to Election Day. And for that, I mean, I can see why they're doing that. I just see some security issues that concern me more than, I feel like the cons outweigh the pros on that. So.
Kim, did I correctly understand that your motion was to deny the fast cast option for the 2025 municipal elections?
Correct.
Yes.
I will second the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Kim, second by Doug. Now, is there any other further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll now go.
Oh, look, because we've already voted.
Okay, that did not pass. We had 3 absent. We need a reset.
I voted no.
You have to live with that now, Kim. Would you like to amend the motion? Is there a way to get that redone?
It's fine.
Okay, we will start here with Doug.
Yes.
Kim.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
And Scott.
Yes.
Okay, that passed 5-0. We'll now move on to our next action item, which is the Mitchell Hollow Trail Design Change Order.
Yes.
Just so you know, Stephanie spent like 2 hours today getting this to work. And so I know that whenever this happens, staff feels sheepish, but know that we really spent a lot of time making this work. And so
Can I just, I'll voice the first. I know we spend a lot of money on some software. We spend a lot, and yet it seems like we struggle. And I know it's software. So Aaron, I recognize that this is software based. This isn't a user error over there. Because we've seen a lot of staff over there trying to just get to work. So with that, let's go ahead. We'll go to item number 4C, which this is a change order for the Murdoch Trail. I think, Jeff, are you going to handle this one?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is to discuss the Mitchell Hollow Trail Design Change Order, which was sent out in the council packet. And it's to discuss the, I had some bullet points there. I don't know if we'll be able to get to those. Maybe in 1 second. I would like to recognize Robert Haslam's here. He's with Consort Design. They're our contracted design engineer for this trail segment. So here's some of the key points. The scope of change consists of adding a retaining wall design, geotechnical investigation for boardwalk and walls, additional slope easements to decrease wall height, and a rapid flashing beacon sign at pedestrian crossing. That would be on Canal Boulevard, where it crosses the Canal Boulevard on this trail. The original contract was for $153,885. This will add an additional $49,275 of cost. As you saw in the council packet, there are some savings that we found in this project due to some restrictions on where we're going to place the trail. Some of the trail won't be constructed with this project due to easements that we were unable to attain. So this is offset a little bit by, as far as numbers go, there is an increase, but there is some construction savings with this project. And with adding these retaining walls and some of the slope easements that were attained by the city, with the help of Consor, we've saved some money on that as well.
So Jeff, I know when we're looking at this trail, and I'm just going to use where it says 25 plus 0, because I was looking, that might be the easiest to, I know in that general area, we'd had some encroachment where a landowner had pushed some soil down that we felt that might affect the trail. Is that any of our cost to try to fix what a resident has kind of pushed on us?
Not necessarily. We've been able to redesign the trail in that location to accommodate that. The original design was going to cross just south of Canal Boulevard and stay kind of up on the existing retaining wall that's up there. Due to complications with that and the cost of that design, we've kind of redesigned how that trail comes down off of Canal Boulevard to the south, and we've been able to accommodate those changes by adding that boardwalk, which will, as it is a cost, it is going to save some money versus the previous design. So there have been those adjustments made.
And then this is also a MAG project. So is this 49,000 coming out of Highland? I mean, this request from Highland, or is this request of the whole project? Does that make sense? Are we paying the 49, or is it going to be part of the MAG project here?
It should be part of the MAG project. I believe it'll be rolled into that. There's a certain percentage that the city is committed to versus what MAG has offered.
Does this affect the percentage that we're committed to?
It should not. With the other construction costs and things like that we found in the project, we shouldn't see an increase in our percentage.
And does this 49,275 include a reserve, a 10% we usually do, or?
Yes, it should. It should consider that. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the trail ends on 9600, right? Because we didn't get permission to go across some property owners down to the equestrian park. And so exactly how long will this trail be again?
It's going to start at, if you're familiar with where Hidden Pond is, just south of Mitchell Hollow Park, the trail already exists going south down into Hidden Pond, and currently it's a dead-ended trail, kind of behind the Hollows development. It'll begin there at that dead end point, and it will proceed all the way down to 9600 North, and then it will stop there and enter a sidewalk for the rest to get down into American Fork until we're able to procure the necessary easements on the south side of 9600.
Yeah, and I've walked through that. I know kind of where it is. I was just curious about the full length because, we're spending $2.5 million to build a trail. I mean, I'm glad to have the trails, but that $2.5 million would have fixed a lot of roads too.
Yeah, I'd
just like to know how long it is.
The overall length, you know that off the top of your head?
So we're spending $2.5 million to build a trail that's less than a mile long.
Yeah, there are some intricate parts of the trail with some boardwalks crossing the
Right.
waterways and things. So yes, there are some high costs.
So the boardwalk is going to be there by the Hidden Pond? I think it's already there.
There will be one just a little bit south of Hidden Pond, right behind the Hollows development, and then there will also be another one just south of Canal Boulevard. So there's 2 locations that we need to cross that hollow. And sorry, I didn't have those pulled up. I should have.
But Scott, you are correct. I mean, you're looking for a mile. It's costing $2.5 million.
I mean,
The good news is our share of that is about $170,000. I mean, still, but
Yeah,
taxpayer dollars are paying.
it's a MAG fund, but I just think it's interesting. I mean, trails are very important. You know, I'm sure I'll go on that trail and that, but it just seems kind of crazy to spend $2.5 million for a trail that's barely longer than a half mile.
Does that include the
Yeah.
property purchase? Do you guys remember?
Yeah.
We met with 2 of the property owners.
Excuse me, would you please state your name for the record?
Yes, I'm Robert Haslam. I'm with Consor Engineers.
Thank you.
So if you look at that exhibit there, the left half of it, 2 properties are owned in there by Lance Beebe and Alvin Tedhumulia. We met with them last week. We did obtain slope easements. Now those slope easements will save about $400,000 of walls, which will come off of that $2.5 million. So we're trying to conserve as much of that money as we possibly can. If you look right in the very middle where it goes vertically in there, that is where one of the boardwalks will be. We have to have that to go over wetlands. There's no other way to do the trail. And then if you look at the far right side, where it makes it kind of a squiggly and then goes straight out where it says 40+00, that's another boardwalk as well over the wetlands. So we're doing everything we can to try to make it all fit and conserve your money as best we can.
So what's the boardwalk made out of? I'm sure it's in your list here. Is it actually boards?
No.
It'd be metal, right?
It's expensive. It is founded on helical piers. They're still piers put in the ground. They're installed with a track hoe, so we don't damage the wetlands. And then everything is precast or galvanized steel railings. So the boardwalk will be a concrete structure.
Right.
Zero maintenance.
So the maintenance is pretty minor.
Zero maintenance, yeah. Yeah.
You know, one of the big things we look at this trail is 9600 allows them to get access up to the Murdoch Trail. Scott, you brought up, unfortunately, we were not able to work with one of the property owners to get us down to the Equestrian Center, because that would then start completing other trails that might go all the way down to the harbor in American Fork. You know, I mean, this is a goal to try to get it all. We are seeing some gaps in this trail.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing to me to spend this kind of money to build a trail.
Yeah,
when we've got lots of trails that need work on them.
Yeah, unfortunately, things are quite expensive.
Any questions about the engineering or anything that way, or cost?
So a background on this. When we originally did the contract with Andy Spencer here, we excluded several things because we didn't know the extent of those at that point in time. So those we excluded were the geotechnical walls, things like that we had to assess and design. Now that we have assessed those, we know the number of walls, we know the location for the geotechnical design. This change order is just so we can add those services in. We have to get a subcontractor on board to do the geotechnical, so that's kind of the extent of why we're doing it. So,
thank you. Council, I've noticed we do have a couple of residents that are here from that area that I think would like to just kind of maybe speak to this, if that's okay. So we'd like to invite them to come up and just share what their feelings are on this change. This is a change order. So, if you'll state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Camilla Pace. This is my first time speaking in front of a city council, so I apologize if I sound nervous. But I'm here to discuss the changes that were made to the Mitchell Hollow Trail that now runs against my property when originally it went into the Beebe's cul-de-sac and did not run against my property, as well as Madeline and Kevin Pace. My reason for coming here tonight is because of my 3 young children that play there, and the changes that were made are now a safety hazard for my family and my little kids. Because of this, I am requesting that the city also fence our side of the Mitchell Hollow Trail just as they are doing for the Beebe's. We understand that you are fencing all or part of the Beebe's property and would like the same done on our side of our property to protect our children. Our family home has been in the family since 1966, and my in-laws moved back to Highland in 1983. And all of this, the Mitchell Hollow Trail was originally running through it was all changed and granted before
Can you maybe look up on the map and point, give us like,
Where
I
you
think it's
live.
10.0 or 50? Yeah, where is it you're talking about?
I'm 6510 West 9600.
But I, like on here where, if you look up at, the maps?
I don't have the map up.
Oh, can you put that map back up? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I've got two screens here, and one screen has it. So as you look at the map there before you, where are you talking about? Like where it says 10 plus, like 10, okay, right there? Okay, and now,
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
now,
I know how to do this.
Sorry.
and then,
I
and
thought-
then let me ask you, so is staff or what was changed? Because they're mentioning that the trail was going to be one area and then it moved closer to their property.
So at one point, just there about, I guess it would be called about 11.00. It used to bend in and go along adjacent to that cul-de-sac. It was built in that area. With negotiate, yeah, right about where the eraser was there. Do I have? Oh, I can draw on it.
Okay, so it used to curve.
So yes, that used to be the alignment. There were negotiations made with the BBs to realign that, just to go straight out to 9600 North, still on their property.
So now what was your concern is the trail is now behind your home, and so you'd like to have the city look at fencing? Is that what the understanding is?
Yeah, I'm requesting that the city fence our side as well, as you guys made the agreement with the BBs to fence their side. Just because my children do play there, that is still the opposite side is my property. That's where my large garage is and our yard. And so for the safety of my children and my family, I would like for the city to also put a fence in on my side for behind my home and my in-laws.
Thank you. Kevin, anything else?
Can you?
I just emphasize that
Just state your name just so we can get on the record.
I'm sorry, Kevin Pace, 9626 North, 6530 West, and my property does abate up to 9600 North. And Camilla was very eloquent. My three beautiful grandchildren do play there. We built our home in 1983, so it predates when Vern Hancock made the agreement with the city to provide the city the right-of-way for the trail system. So we're different than most others where the trail system was put in as part of their development. And when residents bought there, they knew the trail system was there. And so now that this trail system is being put into place subsequent to our ownership, our grandchildren play there, especially for Camilla and Chris, where the design of the trail was recently changed to accommodate somebody, the city or the BBs or someone, that directly puts the trail contiguous to their property line and our property line. And there is nothing really to prohibit anyone from, the worst case scenario, snatching one of the young children. So it's a safety issue that is unplanned for, and we're quite concerned about. If my wife were here today, she'd be bawling, and she'd be after all of you because it is a safety concern. So we're looking for an accommodation from the city to at least address with us the safety concern and how that might be mitigated, since we are really innocent in this trail design and the approval. We were never asked to comment on it. We were never involved with it. The city never asked our opinion or what, if anything, we would like to do. Incidentally, I'm in favor of the trail system. This is a unique piece of real estate in Highland, and it will be used heavily because of the fact that it parallels and goes down into Mitchell Hollow. This is going to be one of the best trails in the flatlands of Highlands, if not the most used trail, because of its uniqueness. But we do have those real safety concerns there for our children and grandchildren.
So, Kevin, are you asking for a fence?
Yes.
That's now, and we appreciate. So now you mentioned, I saw a fence in the presentation, or maybe I gotta remember if it was this presentation or my screen. We were putting fence for other property owners, is that correct? And why are we doing for other property owners?
So the properties, the BBs and the attached mulias, sorry.
So what numbers would they be on this screen?
They're the properties on the lower half of that screen.
So are they 10, between 10 and 15?
Yeah, the whole stretch there.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's the two property owners own the majority of that.
Okay.
The southern portion, east side of the trail. So where Rob just drew that is where the fence is proposed. Part of that negotiation was
on their side of the property.
Yes, they have animals and livestock in that area to keep them off the trail, and they signed the agreements for the slope easements But that was the only thing they asked in return for that, was that fence to be put up.
You have to come to the mic.
Anyway, is there anything else we need to go through? Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for coming.
No, thank you. Just to give an update on that. So in the design that we're at right now, if you look at about 15 plus 00, the trail starts to climb up on a little ridge there. And we deviate the trail from that property line by about 8 feet to make everything fit for a large wall. So at that point, all existing property fences are maintained on that west side. Any place that we impact this, and Jeff, my understanding is anything where from the start up to that point, any impacted fences will be replaced. The intention is not to have an open trail behind anyone's property. But part of the agreement with Alvin and Lance was to fence off their property. And that was part of that agreement last week, was to pick what type of fence so the horses don't have dog issues or anything else. And then as part of that, they granted a large amount of slope easement to make that happen.
Well, you're saying that, and that's where you're saying it could save $400,000 by doing.
Absolutely.
Now, let me ask you, we were curving in by the cul-de-sac. Why was that curve? I remember 9600, I think, is a little bit higher, so I can't remember if we did that to be able to get better sidewalk access there, or why was it curved and not falling, and why is it now going straight?
There's an old existing piece of trail that's right there at the mouth of that cul-de-sac. That was part of the original easement. As part of the realignment of those easements, it was put along the property line. So it's a 20-foot width all the way along the length of that property line. For Lance's property through there, we've asked for another, I believe it's 5 feet of width, if you recall. Once we get up into Alvin Tedhumilia's property, which is about, you can kind of see the property line right there. It's between 15 and 20. Alvin has granted us a 23-foot slope easement to allow for that wall to be taken out. And so that allows us to do a 3-to-1 fill slope into his property.
Do we have any sidewalk where that blue mark is at?
No.
So we're emptying out into a area where there's not sidewalk.
No, part of the addition is we have a crosswalk there, a new rapid flashing beacon. We will be going and seeking property on the south side of the road for sidewalk.
It'll carry across straight across south across the road, and then we'll connect that sidewalk to the west as part of the project.
Correct, across the Paxman and the Dean property.
Can you draw where we're talking where that's going to be going? So and this is now where this new software helps us, so we can kind of, so it's going to be on.
I got to pick
right there.
I got to pick the right thing.
Yep, right there.
Okay, that's what I understood, because I remember talking with the PACs that we were trying to work something that there's still a sidewalk access that they could go. So.
Yes.
And that'll complete the pedestrian access all the way through to the sidewalk system, so there's a safe landing for everyone.
So if they come here, if they want to get the question or down, I want to say, they can come here, and now we have sidewalk all the way down to 6,800. So we're going 96 down to 6,800, so they could walk from that area if they need to.
Correct.
Still come here on sidewalk. They have to cross the road. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I ask some questions. So we're talking about fencing the east side of the trail corridor as part of the slope easement compromise. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. The fencing would run from where it says 10 up to 25. 25 is where we cross that location with the walls and the illegal fill.
Sure.
Once we reach there, we hit the city's property. We don't need to fence the city property anymore. So you'll come through there, you'll go across the boardwalk, and we have some safety rail fences where we have steep slopes in minor areas.
So between the fence and the other property on the west side, how wide is the trail corridor?
The corridor is 20 feet.
20 feet?
Yeah.
And so I think what Mr. Pace and the gentle lady that was here, they want that area fenced, but you're saying you're not going to disturb fences that are already there? I need to go look at this.
In locations, in certain locations, so from the start at 10 up to about 15, we will disturb fences. They're right at the edge of that. We will impact those. Once we get further north, to make the topography work, we have to put a fairly large block wall in. So it's a vertiblock wall. They're big cast concrete pieces. They're about a ton a piece. To fit that and construct it, we had to pull the wall away from the property line approximately 6 feet so that we can excavate and not have to impact their properties. So the existing fences from about 15 north to 25 will be maintained in place. We will not impact those.
So once again, on the east side of the green line here, they'll have a fence that's kind of a pasture type of fence for their horses. On the west side, from 25 where this green line's at, all the way down to about 15, are there existing fences staying in place, or are you putting new fencing?
From 10 to 15, where the fencing is impacted, it will be replaced.
So if a property owner has a fence, then you're going to replace it. But if they don't have a fence, then it's open. Like, because we're talking the Paces sound like they don't have a fence in that area.
I've walked the whole area. It's all fenced currently along Lance Beebe's property. I think their concern was that it may be taken out and not replaced.
So if you take out the Paces fence, are you replacing it back?
That should be done, yes.
Does that answer your question, Kevin?
Excuse me,
Kevin,
Mr.
if you'll
Pace,
come up.
can you please come to the, thank you.
So I'm still kind of confused. So it sounds like if there's a dilapidated fence and you take it down, we're not putting back up the same fence. We're putting up a new fence, right?
Yeah, my understanding is they will not impact the dilapidated fence there that is just dilapidated. And it's not a secure fence at all. It's an old farm fence that Lance has improved a little bit along the way, but there are big gaps in it. You walked up on
Is it up on top of Lance's property? It kind of terraces down into his property. He's on the top of the terrace.
If you follow the old farmer fence line, his property is to the east of the old farmer fence line. So if you're walking on my property and you're coming up, you'll see where he just pulled in an old metal gate where the fence got knocked down, and he just put up an old metal gate there.
So Kevin, look at this. Is your fence up off this area here?
No, our fence is directly along the black line. If you can call it a fence, but that's what it is.
So I think that's why there may be an impact where if it's built right on property line, sometimes fences straddle a property line. So if you cut half the property away, you might have to, shore it back up again. But there's no real impact to the property. The fence will be maintained. It's just if there's any impact because we're cutting away a little bit, we'll make sure that's shored back up. But it's not going to be replacing the fence with something.
So any fence you're touching, you're replacing.
I will defer to the city, whatever the city would like us to do.
What do you mean by defer to the city?
If you would
on
like
that?
us to go assess the whole fence and determine what pieces to keep or not, we'll go assess it. It's not a big deal to us.
Okay.
It's a big deal to us.
I know. We're happy that if it's not the right kind of fence, there is a separation. So at about 15, I don't know, sir, what property is yours? Is it right above the 15?
Yeah, yes, if you look at the 15 and you have a line that's right there, you go a little bit to the left, that's our property line.
Kevin,
there's a
if you
road
touch
there.
the top right corner, you'll be able
And
to
you're
draw.
to the left of that or to the right of it?
Where is it now?
Maybe I'll put some number.
Our intention in design is to not leave a bad condition, right? It's not hard for us to go replace a fence as part of the plans. As we construct that large wall, we just cannot impact the property on the other side of that wall. And so the intention was to leave it, but if we have to replace those fences along the top of that wall, that's not.
What number are you? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
I'm not sure. I think we're 1. I drew the sort of purple pink line.
Okay.
That is the property line between myself and the neighbor.
And that road is on the south side of your property?
Yes. Well, our property line goes down the middle of that road.
Okay. So it sounds like the contractor is willing to go out and evaluate what the situation is with the fence, and so.
We would appreciate that.
Absolutely. As Chris
that's
and
good.
Jeff directed us,
Hey,
we're
thank
happy
you.
to go do that.
This is probably a bigger, we thought this would probably be a fast discussion, but this is.
Jeff, I assume that's good.
We
Right,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
we'll definitely assess it. The point of the whole item was just the increase in the engineering costs.
Yes, this
for
is
right
about
now.
a
But yes,
minute.
this is something, Mr. Pace came in on Monday and talked to Rob and I. And once Chris gets back in town, we'll definitely go down there and assess it and see what needs to be done with the assistance of Consor.
Absolutely.
For sure.
What's the surface of this trail going to be?
Asphalt,
It's all asphalt, and how wide?
12 feet.
No, did you say 12 or 20?
Well, the corridor is 20.
Easement is 20. The trail is 12 feet paved with 2-foot shoulders, so it meets the standards of
Okay.
the state.
And city, we will take over the ownership and maintenance of this, correct?
That's my understanding.
Yes.
Is there
Yes,
cons-
it will be a city-owned and
So
maintained trail.
Jeff, is there concern about when we're saying there's boardwalks and things that way about maintenance cost in the future of what the material and everything being done?
I mean, there are costs associated with any trail or anything that's any improvement, but the type of material that they proposed we install, and we still have the decision to go with that material or not, but the stuff that they've designed is more of a concrete type boardwalk. We're hoping it's a little less maintenance. But yeah, always is going to be a maintenance impact associated with any of it.
So, Mayor, if we do anything with the fence as part of this project, let's just make sure we know who owns the fence and who's responsible for it going forward.
And let's make sure it's not us.
Smart.
I'm thinking
Unlike
ahead.
the Alpine Highway.
Okay, let's be, Kevin, here's some transparency. You put the fence in now, you don't have to meet the trail corridor fence requirement. If they come and put it in with the trail, it will be a fence that meets the trail corridor requirement. Do you
So
understand
why
what I'm
have
saying?
the city council's approval to put in a fence now?
No,
That
you
can
have to
be a
still do a
6
fence
foot?
permit.
Yeah.
You have to come
Yeah,
put a fence permit.
I can do that.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
That
So if
right
we do
now,
it
there's not a
now-
trail existing. You can come and apply for a fence without the trail existing. Once a trail exists, there's a different type of fence that can go along a trail.
Okay.
I'm not going to quote you on that. But that's
Thank you.
Just sticking with the agenda, I think we need to just stay on the agenda of what is it that we're trying to do, and we need to. So I'd like to make a motion. I move that the city council approve a change order with concert for the Mitchell Hollow Trail design in an amount of $49,275, bringing the total cost to $189,170.
Mr. Mayor, there is a real safety concern along there. We need some no parking signs.
Liz, we've let others speak. I'll let you speak to this issue.
I apologize because I know you want to move along, but I didn't know anything about this. And on 9600 North, what we're going to end up with are cars parked along there. We need some no parking signs or red paint or whatever you want to do. But that is not the area to park and then take that trail from there. There is a safety concern on that. And as fast as people are going, and I know that you're doing calming measures on that, but it's all tied in. So that is a real concern. And
Okay, thank you for your input. Okay, we have a motion by Kim. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Kim, second by Ron. Is there further discussion that needs to have? This is a
Yeah.
Mitchell Hollow Trail. This is just amendment to change order.
So, Mayor, I mean, we're doing this for design, right?
This is a change
But
order.
I think Liz brought up something very valid because we've changed where this trail ends now. So she's right. You need to make kind of provision for
No parking.
Well, for parking. I mean, are you just going to say, how do people approach this trail? I mean, there are people that will park there and go up the trail and back. So I think that should be discussed in the design as well. I mean, a lot of times we build things without restrooms, without parking facilities. We do all this stuff.
If you're familiar
Yeah.
with this area on 96, this is a very narrow area.
I know, I drive it all the time, but I'm just wondering, yeah.
So this is still part, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Scott's brought that up. Is there anything we feel like we need to do as part of this change order?
I don't know that we need to do anything with regard to parking as part of this change order, but clearly we do need to consider that. I do have one question about the motion that the original contract was 153 something, and the additional 49 of the change order brings it to 189. Does that $13,000 discrepancy, is that because of the section that we are no longer doing? Does that save us the $13,000?
You're going to have to walk me through your numbers again.
Yeah, on an earlier slide, it said that the original contract was 153 something. 153,885. That would be exactly the.
That could be a typo. Chris actually typed this up. I didn't create this slide, so
Way
I
to
apologize.
throw your boss under the bus while
No.
he's on vacation.
I'm just saying I'm not as deeply involved with this as I should be, I guess.
Are the numbers we're doing in the change order correct?
It seems
the-
like
And the
one-
189 is,
I think
Okay.
the motion's correct. I think the discrepancy's in the 153,885.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll go to electronic voting. Rob, are we okay to electronic vote on this one?
Wow.
It did not pass. I didn't want to vote it. This passes 5-0. We will now move on to our expedited items, which is 5A, which is an action item, is the 10050 drainage project, and that will also be you, Jeff.
Thank you. So this is an existing curb area that's been holding water. We've had some complaints, and it's been an issue for years. Highland has budgeted the money to repair this, and as part of the maintenance of the city's storm drain system, the city solicited proposals for this project with a low bid of $52,066 from Baker Construction. The bid award is for $57,272.60, which will include a 10% contingency. Any
other
questions
discussion?
on this one? I think we do have an illustration of where this is located. It's just a section of curbing. It's settled down over the years, and it collects water and pools there. After any rain event or storm, it's just a problem area. So we're just addressing that.
If there's no discussion, we'll accept a motion on this.
I'll make the motion. I move that the Highland City Council award the bid for the 10050 drainage project to Baker Construction in amount up to $57,272.60.
I'll second.
A motion by Scott, second by Kim. We'll go ahead and go to vote on that one. That's 5-0. Now move on to our next item, which is 5B. This is the interlocal agreement with Utah County for the 2025 elections, and this will be you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Before you is our, let's go through our slides. It's a 2025 municipal election year. We have seats open for the mayor and 2 city council members. I think you know who you are. Your candidate declaration period is going to be Monday through Friday, June 2nd through 6th, promptly from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., no later. The primary election, if needed, will be Tuesday, August 12th, 2025, with the general election on Tuesday, November 4th of 2025. Thank you.
Stephanie, if I could just, since we've talked about the candidate filing period, I'd like to call out what you mentioned the other day, that the candidate filing beginning now includes the conflict of interest form. So
Yes.
people need to be aware and have that done because they can't file.
That is
without that.
correct. Yes. So one of the requirements with the legislature this year is that all candidates have to fill out the conflict of interest and financial disclosure form, similar to what you all did as elected officials in January. However, that does need to be presented to me at the time that they file their candidacy. The exception to that is, say, if an incumbent chose to run again, they do not need to present that form to me again.
Because we've already done it.
You've already done it. Yes. Yes. Okay. So the ILA that is before you
can I
tonight.
ask, what about
Yes.
if the candidate is, I'm just thinking big.
Yes.
If they're in one position, let's assume they're council and they're running for mayor, does their council conflict of interest count for if they run for mayor?
I want to say yes, but because you've already filled that out.
Okay.
It's not going to change.
It's if there are
I
changes.
just want to make sure how that would work.
Yeah, I think if there were some significant changes, then I would want you to fill out a new form.
Okay.
But I don't believe I've read anywhere in the new code that says anything about. It just says if an incumbent wants to run
So
again.
if the mayor decides to run for city council, I don't have to fill it out. Okay.
Yes. All right. So the ILA that we're looking at tonight is simply for the Utah County Elections Office to help us running our elections. I've got a couple of slides up here that show what in the ILA, what's the responsibilities that are broken down. kind of overview. I know this is an expedited item, so you don't need to read. I'm not going to read all of those to you. They were in the packet. Basically, the county does all of the paperwork, kind of the ballot creation. They handle all of the security in the election. They handle all the ballot processing. They provide the results. They tabulate. Our city responsibilities are kind of what I like to call the nice relationship building responsibilities that we get to have here, where we get to meet the candidates. We take their candidate filings, we post the notices, we walk them through their conflict of interest and financial statements, walk them through their candidate financial statements that they need to fill out throughout the campaign. We're kind of the liaison with the candidates, and the city is also the liaison with the residents, informing them of any type of election-related voter registration. We direct them as to where they need to go. Let's see. We also host the election results on the city website once we have those, and we also facilitate the canvas meetings once we have those results. So it's kind of, it's pretty, this is the same kind of arrangement as before. I do want you to know that I did reach out to Utah County proactively and asked them if we could have a vote center here, and they said they would be happy to do that. This time it will be free of charge to us.
Wow.
So
What is that again? I didn't.
I reached out to Utah County and asked them if they would let us have a vote center here, and they said yes, they would, and they're not going to charge us for it this year.
Great.
So.
What does vote center mean? That they can come here on election day and cast a vote?
Correct. Yep. Last year you had requested that, and so this year I just reached out proactively and said, I think we may want to have that. What would it cost? But I said, if you're going to have one here anyway, please don't charge us. And so they're not going to charge us.
Oh.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the cost estimate, this is a not to exceed $2.75 per voter per election. Right now we have 13,282 registered voters. That was as of July 1 of this year. The primary election then would be $13,525.50, as would also the general election, which the total cost would be $73,0501.
Where does the $2.75 per voter?
Very top line right there on that slide.
Yeah, no, but where does that come from? How is that established?
You know, the county has established that based on their costs.
Okay.
So.
And it's a monopoly, so we don't have a choice.
Do you have any questions for me on this?
I had one question. So most of these services the county provides are pretty like black and white, the ballot layout and design, printing, those kinds of things. For the signature verification and curing of ballots returned with inconsistent, mismatched, or missing signatures, is there any kind of requirement about like what percentage of ballots they need to cure, or in what time frame? Or is it just whatever they get around to?
That is a great question. I know we had quite a few ballots that were not cured last time. I know that's what you're getting at. I know they try really hard to get them done as fast as possible. I don't know, Rob, do you know if there's anything in code that says there's a certain deadline? I mean, certainly before the canvass, they want to try and get as many of them so they can be counted, right? But I don't know if I've ever read anything in code about a deadline on that.
Just everything else seems pretty clear what is like acceptable service and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So can I just ask a quick question? So
Yes.
if there are only 4 or less candidates that run for city council, there's not a primary. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, but if it goes to 5 or 6, then there's a primary.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there are more than 2 mayoral candidates?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, more than 2.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll take a motion.
I'll make
I do
that
have a
motion.
question on the June 2nd to the 6th. The 6th is a Friday. We're not open on Friday.
I will be here from
You
8
will be
a.m.
here,
until
and
5
the
p.m.
gates will be open. So,
Yes.
Okay.
Traditionally, that is the busy day where everyone tries to kind of.
I imagine.
So I'll make the motion if it's okay, if you're through with the discussion.
Okay.
Okay, I move that the Highland City Council adopt the resolution and direct the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement with Utah County to assist with the administration of the 2025 municipal elections.
I'll second that.
Motion by Scott, second by Ron. That passes 5-0. We'll now move on to our next item, which is going to be, we'll have a discussion on the number 6A, which is now this says it's a discussion item, but it has action. So anyway, this is about the Grassfield Reservation Policy. These are discussion items only, correct? There's no vote to happen on these discussion item only. So,
Action is on the field.
Yeah. So we had to post this agenda this week without Stephanie, and obviously things went a little haywire. You know, we just need her around very much. So
They did a great job. I appreciate them when I'm gone.
so this one will be kind of tag team by Aaron and myself, and Aaron has kind of a, if you want to go ahead and start off with
yeah, absolutely. And so these next three items relate to each other, but I'm going to try to keep them a bit distinct. So right now we're talking about grass fields, meaning like the fields that you use for soccer, lacrosse, that kind of a thing. So those fields. Mayor asked me to kind of address what are we doing right now as far as reservations for sports usage. And so the way the code works that we established 2017, I want to say, is we said, okay, there's these type of fields and we're going to establish what kinds of uses we allow on them, like reserved uses based on parking lots, like how many parking stalls are available, how big the field is, and whether or not there are restrooms there. So we kind of came up with that criteria. We created some categories basically and said, okay, if you're, this many parking stalls, this size of a field, if you have restrooms or not, dictates what kind of use we allow on the field. So I listed this in the report, but essentially we have, kind of biggest to smallest or most impactful to least impactful, basically is what we've done. And so if you'll go forward a slide, we have, okay, so based on those guidelines, we have our fields broken up. And I'm sorry, this did not turn out well in the report like it did when I previewed it, but those type of fields, again, based on parking lot, whether they have restrooms, and field size. I will say, so Lone Peak is a good example. They do not have a restroom, right, at Lone Peak. However, because they're such a big field, teams want to rent them. We rent a porta potty, right? And they pay, the teams pay the cost of that. So while there's not a permanent restroom there, we make it, in order to play games, they have to pay for a porta potty to be there.
Wouldn't that be true also Wimbledon South?
Yes. Well, it was true at one time, as we will talk about. And so that's how we've broken out the fields. And I'll say, so all community field 1s are also community field 2s, right? So you can practice or games on community field 1s. All right, moving on. So some things to I think next slide talks about the prices that we charge right now. And Councilmember Courtney and I had a conversation about this. We do need to look at our prices. We haven't changed these since we adopted this in 2017, 2018. I know that they are very low considering what other cities are charging. And probably not meeting our costs. And number 2, we really should be doing this not by who is renting the field, but the impact on it. So we really should not be breaking it down by for-profit and nonprofit. So that is something we long-term need to look at. Well, need to be looking at addressing sooner rather than later, I'll say. So questions to consider. So Mayor really brought this up because he wanted to see, are there more parks, or I shouldn't put words in your mouth, Mayor. I think the conversation is, are there more parks that we should be renting that we're not? We are not renting Wimbledon. So Wimbledon, per our policy, should be rented, but we got a lot of pushback from the neighbors a few years ago, and at the time, staff was told to stop reserving that park while we work some things out. And honestly, it's one of those things that we just never got back to. So that's one park we could easily, if we want to keep the policy status quo, we could just add that back in and start reserving that park. But wanted to ask the council, do you want to make any adjustments to the policy as it sits, right? Should we be more aggressive in renting more facilities? Should we be narrowing it more? Really, we're just applying the policy as it is, and so just looking for feedback at this point.
So, Aaron, tell me what the concerns you heard from the Wimbledon South Park.
Nobody liked the porta potty. because it was too close to their homes. I mean, the parking lot is pretty close. I mean, it's right in between two homes, ultimately.
Right.
Nobody liked the porta potty. And unfortunately, kids are kids sometimes, and they tip over porta potties. And so that's a concern. The other thing was the parking, because we were renting this where I think it was Lacrosse was playing there quite a bit. And so it's just a lot of parking impact on that area. There is a small parking lot in Wimbledon, though, which is why we were renting it. It met the guidelines.
I think one of the other reasons was originally it was an open space park.
Correct.
And so there is that issue of should we be able to rent open space parks when the neighbors around it are paying a $20 open space fee and yet they can't be able to use it?
But that's changed.
Well, and
Yes.
I think that's why it's now important to come up. Can you go I mean, we have the Wimbledon. Can you just go back up to the list? Because there's a couple of parks, like you have the Wimbledon one. Now, so let me ask you, there's the one that's up by our power station, up by the beacon. Is it Shamberry? What's that park called?
Shamberry?
So I thought that was large enough to actually, it doesn't have a parking lot. But see, I remember coming on, you had Windsor Meadows had some soccer games. I know they complained some of the parking. Shamberry, they would complain probably because parking. But your grass area is large enough. Actually, Canterbury Circle, when we moved here, I remember my kids having soccer games there at Canterbury Circle. You know what I mean?
Well, North Canterbury also.
And North
yeah.
Canterbury. So I'm saying
Soccer game.
it's time for us to look and go, okay, is this the parks? And this comes back in the question of the Wimbledon South. Do we want to have the criteria of parking and bathroom, or do we want to say, hey, is it only for practices? Should be these, because we only have down that they can practice on these other fields, but there's a lot of other fields that are out there that used to be open space parks. They're no longer open space. Should they be opened up more for practices? And maybe people are practicing, they're just not working with the city on it. And so,
Oh yeah, so this is just for parks that are reserving, but and there's one category I didn't really touch on, neighborhood parks, right? Which is a lot of what you're talking about. Canterbury Circle would be one. There's no bathrooms, there's no parking lot. And so at the time, the council decided we don't want to reserve that to groups who are going to have to drive there. But if a local group around that area who's going to hopefully walk, some of them want to use it, they can use it. But we're not going to actively reserve that park.
But see, like that Canterbury Circle has a pavilion. It has a tennis courts on it. To be honest, we could convert into 2 pickleball courts.
We should.
You know, I mean, I'm just saying, it's
right.
time that we look at the parks and go, are we using the parks in the way, and I'm just going to, all residents are paying for the parks now. And so that's something we have to also look at on our policy. Is there?
Well,
I just
and-
think the
yeah.
hardest thing is the bathrooms, the porta potties. If I'm going to a park with a game and there are no bathrooms there, that's an issue. That's a big issue. Those trees, they're getting peed on. Okay, I'm just going to say it.
Let me ask you. So, a lot of our schools will rent out their fields, but they don't have bathrooms.
No, that's a big issue.
But they do it. I'm just saying. That
Yeah, I mean Mountain Ridge, we have soccer games there, and the kids will run over to Heritage Park bathrooms to use that.
I'm just saying, like Highland Elementary, I know that the kids are always playing games there, but there's no bathrooms there.
Oh yeah, that's a big issue.
So it's just
So-
that's something we have to consider.
Is there a difference, though, on usage of the parks, whether it's a practice or a game? Because I would think games would bring in a lot more people. I think they should all be open for practice, in my opinion.
Should they be
But I
reserved
think-
for practices? I'll be open for reservations for practices.
I kind of think so.
Yeah.
Why not? I think they should be for practices, but there's a big difference between people that are practicing and a game. So you have a game, you're going to have a lot more traffic, you're going to have a lot more congestion. So I think you have to just kind of sort between the two. I don't know.
So reserve and charge for practices and games?
I think I don't know, maybe tell me what other cities do, but I was almost thinking if you have parking and bathrooms, you can reserve for games and practices. If you don't have parking and bathrooms, just for practices.
Now, would we charge for right now? Are we charging if they reserve for practice? I think.
Yes, we charge practice or games.
Those are very low.
So these porta potties, they're there all summer?
Anytime that they are going to be anytime it's reserved, which tends to be all summer. Yes.
I'm not for the porta potties being left there all summer long by neighbor houses.
I know.
That's what happened at Wimbledon.
style.
And I mean, if I was that neighbor, you have a porta potty that's being knocked over every single week right next to my house.
No, and I guess it depends. I mean, there you do have two houses. I mean, there is, how many parking spaces do you think you have in Wimbledon? Is there any?
Isn't there about 10 or 12 or
Yeah.
something?
I
So-
do remember thinking that maybe we reserved it as or classified it as a field 1 and it should have been a field 2 type of a thing. So maybe it would have been slightly less use, like practices, not games.
Yeah.
When we took a second look at that field.
I'm just saying if you just have it so that the fields without bathrooms only can be reserved for practice, then maybe you don't have
I
to
would
bring in the
agree with
porta
that.
potties.
Just have the porta potties if there's reservations for games.
And then that's why I'm saying, like, so if games can only be reserved for those parks that have bathrooms and parking, so you don't have to do the porta potty thing.
So, but permanent bathrooms.
Yes.
Permanent bath.
So that would mean that Lone Peak no
Well,
longer
no, that's what I'm
could.
saying. You have to be careful. With Lone Peak Fields,
right?
We do want to have games there, and we do put porta potties out there.
And that those are very heavily used.
Well, I guess that's not by any resident houses, though.
The fields
Okay, so it's the thought process. It's you don't necessarily have an issue with the porta potties. It's just if it's right by a home.
Yeah.
What are we doing right now with Wimbledon South? Can they reserve for
No,
nothing?
nobody can reserve that one right
So
now.
what we're saying is Wimbledon South and some other parks would be opening up possibly for this neighborhood practices.
We would also, and
Or-
if you wanted to also shrink the field requirement size, and granted, I did this back in 2017, so it's been a while, but like Josh and I went through and we measured out fields, and so these were the only fields that qualified based on the guidelines we came up with. And we can shrink those guidelines, right? Like, do you really need a full-size soccer field for practices? Probably not, right? You can shrink that, and so we potentially could open it up more if we
Well,
want
I-
to shrink the field
I bet you're
sizes.
opening up to 10 more fields, meaning if you're just talking that, hey, they have to have 100 feet or they have, whatever I don't know, you have like U6 and U8 and 10. I mean, maybe we say, okay, like you said with practice, they're not needing to run. They can say, okay, we have this one area to practice in. And there probably are a lot of parks area that would open up for practice.
Well, and as I think about it, really, they're going to self-select, right? If it's too big of a team for that practice, right? They're too big of kids. The coach isn't going to put it there, right? Because it won't be efficient for them to practice. And a game, right? They're going to know what they need for a game. So do I
It would
understand?
be good to look though at the neighborhood parks and see if there are any of those that we can classify as rentals now.
Okay.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like your Shanbury Fields, you're going to have one up in the Dry Creek area, up by where you're living. There's, where Sarah Peterson used to live. There's a big field behind there. Now, like I said, I'm sure there's some that just go and practice there already. I think, you got over in the Windsor Meadows. You're going to have.
Yeah, that's a big field at Windsor Meadows.
And that's what I'm saying. I think for practice, it used to be, Scott, if you remember the complaint we had when we first got on council, people were parking up all up and down, and that was where the bathroom situations come in. We used to rent those. So I'm saying.
But you could still have practices
I think
there,
the practices. So do we need to have this one come back with saying this is now the list? And do we want to give some criteria of a certain size? Or do we want them?
I think it's self-select is
I
fine.
do too. Like that criteria of 12 years old and younger seems a little arbitrary.
Yeah.
And I think it was done based off of what a 12U field was. But I'm fine with it being kind of coaches can self-select a little bit. And we give them some guidance, right? This is how big the field is, right? Be aware. So do I understand the only time you can reserve it for games is if there's a parking lot and bathrooms there.
Yeah.
Except, and when we're saying, but
except
Lone Peak East and West would be classified because
Well,
they don't have.
but the only time we want to put porta potties is if there's a field, if it's not by houses.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, are there any other fields that impact? Let's see, Mitchell Hollow has bathrooms. Wimbledon does not. Beacon Hills does not. It does
It
have
has
bathrooms.
bathrooms.
That's right. The COVID money, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so that one is still okay for games. So the only place we would be putting bathrooms, at least at this point, is Lone Peak, but not in Wimbledon.
Right.
Okay. But for example, let's see, Town Center does not have restrooms.
But they're only practicing.
Not by a home, and so we would. This council's willing to put a porta potty there. Then.
Well, hold on. Are we willing to put a porta potty?
No.
Because there is no homes. They would put one in Town Center. Is what you're saying right now. Your question is.
But you could put the porta potty over by the police station.
Well, no, you'd put it actually in the parking lot
I
by the
know.
pavilion, and there's no houses by it.
So yes, it's okay to put a porta potty there.
I understand, but that's the question.
No.
Is the list only here without Wimbledon South being on there where they can have games, and is Town Center just a practice field?
I think town center just practice. I mean, you're putting a porta potty right by a pavilion.
But why, help us understand, like, why, I mean, I would love to kind of create, here's the reason, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree our current policy needs some tweaking, but it's nice in its, do you meet these check boxes,
I mean,
right?
do we have games at Town Center at all?
I know there's practices all the time.
I don't think, that's just not a field that you would even have games on.
They'll practice. I see a lot of
But-
teams there.
Yeah, I
practice.
just don't see games there.
But there's actually parking. All they have to do is walk up in here and park.
Well, and there's a parking lot by
Yeah.
the pavilion.
And there's a
Do we ever
parking lot
get
over there.
people that will be at that Town Center Park walk over here to use the bathrooms in the city facilities?
I would bet.
Well, Josh is saying yes.
As long as we're open, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the
If not, then
time
you
of
would have
day.
Splash pads opening up too. I mean,
Yeah.
you do have bathrooms at the splash pad too.
Right.
Yeah.
This might be an easier conversation if we had like a map that we could look at, like an
Of all the
overview
parks.
and see what the parks are, so we
agree.
could make a decision based generally, like not on each specific park.
Are we okay with giving staff kind of say, will you
Yeah.
look out there, come back with what your recommendation of this would be a good practice one versus this one we might want to consider? Like you said, the town center doesn't meet, it doesn't have homes by it, and that, do we put a bathroom there or do we leave it? That we're
Well,
saying,
that-
no, it's close enough to the city center that,
And the homes are a ways away, really. I mean, they're kind
Correct.
of, they're not as close as Wilmington South.
so.
Okay, staff will work on kind of some updates to our policy and bring it back for your feedback, I think.
Are we getting rid of the nonprofit versus for-profit and just making it resident versus non-resident?
We could do resident versus non-resident, or we could just do a flat rate for whoever rents it.
Council, what's your feeling on that? You got, let me just ask, so you have, okay, would Surf Soccer then be a for-profit?
We make them provide to us a tax exempt certificate if they want to get the nonprofit rate. So I think Surf, they don't
What
rent
entities
from
are
us.
paying for profit? Do we have, what entities are reserving they're paying for the profit? It sounds like all of them were probably worked around somehow to get the nonprofit.
I don't know. Shelley is our field person, and she's not here tonight, so I don't know. But I know that she requires them to get us a nonprofit.
Resident versus non-resident makes more sense, like the same thing that we do for the community center or whatever.
But let me ask you, so you have one person that's a resident come reserve and they bring in teams from Orem. I'm just,
Yeah, but I mean, I've had an instance where my kids have played for Nukes soccer, and the coaches go to try to reserve the field, and it asks all this like your nonprofit liability insurance. They're just trying to reserve it for their team, and so they don't have anything showing that they belong to this nonprofit organization just because, you know, they just. It's Nukes, and so it's really hard. So they end up just reserving for a for-profit entity, and then Surf comes in, and then they have some type of, you know, exemption, and they have all their teams on there, but really they're for-profit.
that's what I'm saying.
So it's just easier to do resident versus non-resident. I think the only hard thing about it is when you go in to make a reservation. I mean, a lot of times people are like, you know what, I want to see if I can get a reservation. Today's Tuesday, see if I can get it reserved on Thursday, kind of thing. And it's a 7-day turnaround time. It's just too long.
What you're saying is you have to reserve at least 7 days out.
Yeah. And I mean, but at that point, people just give up and say, I'll just, you know, show up and see if anybody's there. So we're losing money on that because there's such a long turnaround time.
Is there a reason why we have such a turnaround time?
Not speaking, so when I spoke about that concern with our last person who was doing this, a lot of the reason is because, and this might be, sorry, I'm trying to think through this and make sure I give you the correct answer. We used to have a lot of deals with people based on seniority, right? Like seniority meaning how long have you been reserving this field for a while, right? And trying to give them preference type of a thing. And so because of that, it couldn't be like an automatic process, right? Like we had to go through and there was a lot of staff checking to make sure, okay, is this really available type of a thing? I don't know if that exists anymore. So honestly, that's something I need to talk with our rental
Well, and
staff
like the
about.
7 days, let's assume it is 7 days. Any of that has a historical should already be in the booking of it.
Yeah.
If they walk in tonight and they're trying to look at for Thursday night, they should be able to reserve. It's all online.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. I asked Shelly about that, and she said, because I was like, why can't you just automatically book it? You know, you want it, reserve it, boom, you're in. But she's like, but then we have to go back and verify whether you're a nonprofit or a profit, whether you're a
Okay.
resident or non-resident.
So you want to say get rid of the nonprofit profit.
Yeah.
But you can say resident or non-resident.
But we're still that way. I mean, I like the resident, non-resident. The only caveat on that is that you can't automatically book it. You're going to have to wait to have it approved, and we don't have anybody working Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer.
Because we have to approve it. I've done it where I've went and booked like on a Friday, and I didn't know till Monday if we had it. And yet I think we had an event Tuesday or Wednesday, so I wasn't able to announce at church. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just trying to do something to grab a pavilion.
The question I have, though, is how, I mean, if they're a team and you're a non-resident who runs the team, but you've got residents on the thing, why wouldn't you just have one of them book it? I mean...
Well, yeah, they'll have them go on, and I mean, if you have one person on that team that's a resident, you're going to go book under their name.
So if we're always gaming the system, why wouldn't we just say
You're
it's
right.
the
Just
same
leave
fee
it.
for everybody?
Just have a general.
Just have a general fee.
Could we do, if you book it in less than 7 days, you pay the higher rate? If you're doing it more than 7 days, then we could verify resident, non-resident.
Oh, yeah.
That might be a good
So
step.
if you do that, can you automatically book then?
That's what I would like. I propose if we could talk to Shelley and say,
Yeah.
if you're less than, if it's 3 days out, you're paying the higher price regardless.
And Josh is always coming up with good ideas.
Okay, if you really want to get, even if it's 3 months out, you want to get it guaranteed right now, this is the price. You can do it, but we have to check reservation, this is the price. You don't, I guess.
Honestly, the more streamlined we could make it, I love. But I mean, I can absolutely ask Shelley to see if we can kind of make that kind of differentiation.
So do we bill people for this, or with the online form, do they pay right there online?
They got to pay right up front.
Because if you're paying online, then we have to know when we're charging them, how much we're charging.
Right. How much we're charging. I really don't know.
And we could just go to a flat fee of whatever it is. If we're really worried about the reservation, just do a flat fee.
This got a lot more detailed than I am prepared to answer, and I'm sorry, council, as far as how the reservation process works.
I like the flat fee as a default position for us as far as
I do
council
too. I think it makes it simple.
However, if you have discussions with Shelley, Shelley's not here, and Shelley has some recommendations, you can always bring those recommendations back to us.
There's not going to be a team in Orem usually running up here to do practices. Now, they might come up for a game.
Yes, there will be. There will be. Absolutely.
They'll come all the way up here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know several baseball teams that come up here just to, I mean, because it's hot commodities trying to get a field. They'll come up here knowing that there's available fields that aren't being rented.
So on these rental fees, are we meeting our costs for maintenance? I mean, this is a big problem. We've got a lot of parks. We've got some new facilities coming online. Or do these fees help us cover our maintenance?
They certainly help, but I mean, honestly, I won't lie, it's difficult to quantify that, right? Like, what is your 1 hour use of a field actually cost us? But it cost the city as far as maintenance. But I will say that our fees are very low in comparison with other cities. So I think that's something we'll need to look at and see if Josh and I can come up with an estimate on that.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're probably a little bit low. And the other thing we have to think about is, I mean, we haven't had a property tax increase in the city for 15 years or more, 17 actually. And so I don't think we're meeting our costs to maintain all these parks. So I think we need to look at our fees and maybe charge more. Because there's a lot of wear and tear on parks, especially if you're hauling in porta potties and doing all this other stuff.
I mean, if we're looking at $5 a fee, like I'm looking, American Fork charges AF residents $45 and non-residents $65.
Do they reserve the field?
Yeah.
For practice?
Is that for an hour?
I'm
Wasn't that
just
a
like
4
looking
hour?
right now, and Lehigh, it looks like they don't rent for practices. They don't, due to limited resources, high demand fields are not available to be rented for practices. So it seems like it might be a thing that's also worth seeing what market value is around there and seeing what other people do. I would be happy to help with some of that research because I hate when we come in here and just tell you all the things to do.
And honestly, this is going to be something that will take us a little bit of time to get done. I think between Shelley, and probably I'm going to delegate this away from myself. There's going to be time. It can get done, but it might take a bit of time.
Well, I guess my feeling is we do a lot of decisions on salaries and things based on the market.
But
I think we should maybe, or some of our fees and costs, we should base on the market too.
That's fair.
I mean, we've just got a lot of maintenance, not a lot of fun, so.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we don't want to make it so restrictive, but at the same time, I'd like to see if this is applicable.
Okay.
You know, two fields you did not see on here was the new Highland Park fields. We're not anticipating renting them this summer because we need to get the grass strengthened up. We need to get, you know, we don't see that until the end of the season really coming where people even can go play on it.
Get the trees taller on the west side.
Yeah. But some of it, if you remember, we hydro-seeded, and so that it's also not thick then. It's going to take a little bit to thicken it up, so. Okay, Aaron, as we look at the grass field policy, has there been clear enough, or is there questions that you're still asking?
Nope, I think I got the information I need, Council. Thank you.
We'll now move on to discussion item number 6B.
Oh, sorry, I have one other thing. Do we rent our fields on Sundays?
Isn't that a no?
Okay.
Yeah. I think we, for 1 day a week that we're asking for a rest on the fields,
Okay.
basically.
That's what I want.
Okay. Let's move on to item number 6B. This is just a discussion item on the baseball fields and batting cages, and this will be Aaron and Kim Rodella.
Okay, so per Councilmember Rodella, I've got this set up in a similar way. So community field 1s and 2s, right? That we did the same kind of a thing for baseball fields, but it was all about really the size of the baseball fields, right? So our Mitchell Hollow field is set up for 12-year-olds and younger, versus Heritage Park is set up for 10-year-olds and younger, and that's just due to how far away home plate is from the outfield, how far kids can hit balls. So that we've got to create a new section for Highland Family Park, right? Much larger individuals can play at that park, and I was there today with Josh, and it looks fantastic. I'm really, really excited. So if you haven't been by,
how soon will we be able to start renting? Because we put sod on that.
So go forward to Rob, if you will. So here are questions that we need to address as a part of that. In relation to when do you want to rent, what do you want to rent for, things like that. So as Josh and I have talked, it will be ready to go in about a month. We can have people on it. However, one thing we want council to consider is, do we, for this first year, only let it open for our donor? We want to let him use it as he needs, but then outside of that, just rent it for games to allow some time for us to, frankly, get our handle on the maintenance and make sure that we're handling it well, and for the sod to establish well. And so that it kind of limits the use this first year, and then we can address it. So I've got a series of questions, basically, and that's kind of the first two. Do we leave it locked up so it can only be rented to be used? And then do we limit the type of rentals that happen on it, right? So do we rent it only for games? And maybe that's something we do this first year and then go from there. I mean, I want our fields to be used, right? We spend a lot of money on them. We want them to be used, but we also want it to stay in good shape. So maybe let's talk about the fields first. How do you want to handle the field usage this first year? And Josh is here also to help answer questions.
Is this just for the Highland Family Park?
Yes.
Baseball field?
Yes. So now I'm just talking about the baseball field, softball field.
I mean, I think if you're going to limit it to just games, that's going to be hard because you already have leagues established and fields already established for games. Who is going to come and play a game there? It's not going to happen. It's going to be used for practices unless we have a league or a team that has put it as their league home field. And that's kind of how it works. You have your rec league, which is Lone Peak. They use our Heritage, which we're still waiting on their contract for that. It's been 3 years now. And then we have our travel leagues, and they already have their leagues, and all those fields already reserved. So when it comes to baseball, this probably will be used, the family park, because it's just a one baseball field right there as practices, unless a team puts together a tournament on there or has scrimmages for games.
Do you
So
think
they
that would
won't-
be different next year if it could be used for games, just because we're late in the season, basically?
No, I mean, we don't have a rec program. We don't have a baseball program. So most likely when we're talking about games, it'll be scrimmages unless there's, you have your UPG, which is Pleasant Grove. They already have that's one league. You have Orem Night Lights, that's another one. That's in Orem. And then you have your RMSB. Those are used on Burgess, unless RMSB wants to reach out to us and say, hey, can we use this park? That I could see that happening because they use Lehigh and Alpine.
Okay, I was just thinking, I was making assumptions that Lone Peak or Hustle or some of those leagues that, or entities that rent from us now would be interested in switching to this field.
Yeah, so I mean, Lone Peak, maybe Lone Peak, but how they've treated our heritage field without a contract and having 24/7 reservation, I think that's something we'd have to look at. Hustle, so the only other thing I could see is a lot of teams around here belong to a league called WBL, and they have a home, they have to establish a home field, and a lot of them go to Riverton since we don't have fields there, so they could try and make that their home field and have games there. One of the hard things though is
we don't have lights.
We don't have
right?
lights.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll say we've had one adult softball league reach out to us and want to use it, but I'm not sure. I can't remember who it is beyond it was an adult
Kim,
softball league.
So let me ask you, I mean, this is a premier field.
Yeah.
You don't see that some teams would come for just 1 or 2 games. I mean, let's assume they're out and they're going, hey, let's go try this brand new field this year. You don't see them maybe reserving for 1 or 2 games just to come in at this field, so it's a different venue.
Well, for a scrimmage, yes, but for a game, in order to do games, you belong to a league, and those leagues are the ones who establish the fields, and they already have those established. So maybe they could be using it as for a tournament if they put on a tournament, but most fields, the city has a contract with a certain league, like Alpine, Burgess Fields, they contract out with RMSB, and in turn, they, they maintain those fields out of Burgess, and then they can have double headers there on Saturday. I mean, they could work with Highland City to establish maybe a city league here and have games on there as well.
So obviously you have a lot of knowledge about this, and I really appreciate it. But I always thought it was said that if you build it, they will come.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for sure there'll be practices there, but you don't have lights on this field, so you can't have night games, and that's one of the hard things about having.
Okay, in the summer, it's light until 9:30, almost 10. So why they? I mean, I'm going, okay, we got residents. Do we really want lights back there until 11?
Yeah.
I didn't understand. I thought we'd be okay without that.
Well, baseball season starts from March and then goes until, I would say, mid-May, end of May, and then tournament season is June, July, and so that's during the day. So you could have tournaments there, but tournaments also require several fields altogether, so you could use that with our 2 Heritage Park fields. I think the biggest thing is probably the WBL League is one that could start using that as their home field, and then you could have games on that.
Who's WBL League?
That's Wasatch League. So right now, a lot of the residents around here, they've gone to Riverton to say Riverton is their home team. So American Fork, Alpine, Cedar Hills, Highland areas, a lot of them all go to Riverton as their home field. So they could bring it here.
Do you not really think that since we have this nice field, they'll come?
I think RMSB would be one that could come and expand their double headers to our
I
field.
thought we were going to put lights on this field. I thought we
we have the conduit. Yeah, but that was one that we had to make it higher up on the priority list.
Oh.
It costs $400,000.
Okay.
I would be interested to know what Josh sees as far as the field and maintenance and how much it's going to take and staff he has to handle it and that kind of thing.
I think it depends on a little bit on how long till we let it break in. That's probably my biggest worry is that we put too much foot traffic on it and then it suffers for the rest of its life. Just doesn't get established very well. And I guess it depends on how much it gets booked out. The home plate is definitely going to be a little more tricky because if you're not familiar, the home plate is turf. It is going to take a little more abuse on it. So we're probably going to have more maintenance there on that home plate.
How are we going to be, like I know down at Mitchell Hollow, we have to do we still, I guess they drag the field? Do we
Mhm.
still drag this field?
Yeah, the field will need to be dragged. It'll need conditioner in it. Right now, it has conditioner in it. It just needs to be mixed in. That conditioner keeps it from getting too hard for when you slide. It helps with the water intake, and so that it doesn't get super muddy. And that, as far as that goes, home plate, I'm looking at getting a mat that will go across it, and it'll just stay across that home plate. And then for games, we'd be able to take it off to try to preserve that home plate.
Maybe what we could do is, I mean, maybe we limit rentals and maybe we don't get a lot of interest in this first little while because we're kind of late in the season, but maybe we limit rentals. It's not just to games, but maybe it's 3 times a week or something like that this first year to,
See
to
how
meet
they
the same
use it.
kind of objective, right? Where we're
How much
easing in
usage
the
is
field.
3 times a week too much? Do we just need to say, hey, you can use it once a week? Or what?
No, I think 3 times a week is probably more appropriate. And so I wasn't sure what our donors' expectations were either. I feel like Highlands always had if you get on there, then you can work your way into having it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And so I figured there's going to be some that are going to try to push to get that priority. Like, hey, if I get on this field, then I might have a higher priority in the future to come.
I think summertime, there's just not going to be as much practice, especially during the afternoon. I mean, it's too hot out there. Kids aren't going to go out in the afternoon. The main times are like morning times and then evening times. But dads are going to want to go out there and practice with their boys. There's not going to be a lot of wear and tear with that. Or, kids will want, there'll be teams that'll want to go practice in the morning.
So let's go up to the first question. Do we want to leave the field locked up? What you're saying, if dads just want to also go practice, if the field's locked up, they can't get on.
No. Mm-mm.
But the concern is also if it's just open, what do we get on it? I mean, that would be a concern I'd have this first year.
But isn't it locked down so it's just people who can get on? And our equipment, I guess, with a locked gate. How have we locked it down, Josh?
Right now, all of it's locked. I've just tried to keep everybody off it as much as possible right now. I mean, because construction not finished. The bases aren't in.
Right.
Your dugouts still need to be some work, whatnot. So I've just tried to keep it off right now especially until we do a grand opening.
Can we open just a man gate?
We can do just a man gate. So a man gate is only open. That's the only thing that's open.
Okay.
And the man gates are by the dugouts.
So, I mean, people could sneak in a motorcycle or something like that still, but it wouldn't be a 4-wheeler.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a
They put
4-wheeler.
the Scion bike.
Yeah.
I go back and forth on this one because I love sandlap ball. I love kids being able to, grab their, friends and bats and go out there all summer long and play on the baseball fields and not have adults with them. But at the same time, I know this is a nicer field. And so when you allow it to be only used by those who have reservations, then when something happens to that field, you can go back and say, hey, you know what? You reserved it. Something happened. You pay for it.
Yes, and we are right next to the junior high. So
My only concern is this first year. I think we've got to kind of get a feel of what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would favor almost locking it up unless they have a game.
That's exactly where I am.
I'd say
Lock
lock
it
up,
as much as we
but
can.
allow practices. I don't think games are going to happen at all this summer on there. I mean, all the leagues and tournaments are already done.
If it's locked up and we have a practice, that means staff has to go unlock it, and then staff would have to go back and lock it up.
we'll figure something out. Yeah.
I think we were thinking like a QR code with a code so that when it's your time, I mean, I have an Airbnb, and so when it's reserved, then there's an automatic code sent to you when it's your time that you've reserved. Then you can put that code in, and it unlocks it. It's pretty slick. I don't know.
Sounds like Coach Saban.
So can I ask a question? Josh, what kind of security cameras do we have around that ball field? There's always these young people that want to vandalize things, and I think that's really sad.
It is terrible. It's disheartening. It can really ruin your day when you go there and you see that we've spent a lot of money and something has been just totally destroyed. We will have a few more cameras on that building. We're waiting for the camera guys don't want to come until we have power, so we're trying to get the power worked out, and then the building by the baseball, they will work on the cameras there. So we'll have some cameras there, and we have some in the outfield. If you drive by, that actually has some, it looks like hoses or pipes sticking out of them. Those are designed to have a couple cameras on those on the outfield fence.
And it's not just like young kids. I know like at Mitchell Hollow, the Hustle team maintains that field and nail drags it like 3 times a week. And they had a contractor drop a bunch of filled dirt on that field with rocks, and so they've spent the past 2 weeks combing through and getting rocks off that
A
field.
contractor would go all the way there to dump. Why would they do that? Like, they know it's going to ruin the field.
That's a great question.
It's amazing what we see.
Any other?
Okay, so we're locking it up, at least this first year, locking it up except for rented activities. And then maybe, I don't know, reserving it to 3 times a week, but we're not even sure if we're going to hit that.
I think open to rental of 3 times a week, but it's locked up.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
And then I
Batty-
just
sorry.
say, like, wait and see if there's any complaints or what the public says. If they have issues with it being locked up, we
Then
can
we'll give
go
you
for there. Yeah.
Batting cages. So our park is unique, and then we're going to have batting cages on either side, which is honestly, as a baseball mom, is fantastic for sure. We had talked about, do we want to rent them or not? Maybe this is the happy medium, right? Because anybody can go in there. If we don't make those reservable, anybody can go and just hit any time pretty easily, right? In an enclosed space, right? It's a lot easier to use a batting cage to hit because you don't have to chase balls. So, do we want to leave those open? First come, first serve.
Batting cage is okay just to leave open?
I'd rent them out. I think people would pay $15 an hour to rent out a batting cage, and especially teams looking for batting cages. It's hard for a team thinking, okay, guys, we want to go hit in the cages at Highland, so I'm going to send somebody over an hour early to sit there and reserve it until I can make sure that my team can come and get it. It's a pain. So, I mean, if there's a reservation possibility, it'd be nice, but I also would want open hours for first come, first serve as well. So I don't know if you could do a happy medium there. Like Saturdays have open hours. Nobody can reserve, just first come, first serve, but during the weekday, rent it out.
Council, any input here?
I agree with Kim on that.
So what we're saying, Saturdays open.
Mhm.
Like I said, really what we're saying is probably the weekend.
Yeah.
So the weekend they're open, then we can just go kind of hit and play them. But then during the week, we would actually reserve.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, a lot of people would love to be able to reserve pickleball courts, but I understand there's also, because of the way it's different, that you
Yeah.
can be there for 20 minutes and then it has to rotate off.
Yeah.
It seems to be working over there. The paddle system seems to work. I just kind of went to pickleball.
I like that also. If you could just rotate off so that somebody doesn't monopolize them for
Well, that's
2-3
yours.
hours.
That's what I was
But the-
thinking.
but
Do
the
you just
batting
put a
cages-
sign on that say, you
20
know,
minutes?
you've got 20 minutes, and
Yeah,
then you've
20
got to
minutes
get
be able
out?
to hit
What do you
if
think,
someone
Josh?
If someone's waiting.
Would you do reservations for batting cages or just say 20 minutes and you got to leave?
Can we lock them?
They're nets, so
No.
it's not.
So, but if someone says, "Hey, I have them reserved," then they have to hopefully respect that reservation. You don't get the conflict.
I think my only thing is if we're going to do the turnaround reservation, if somebody goes in and sees somebody in those batting cages that shows up, it's not reserved, they're hitting, and then somebody wants to use it, they can quickly go in and reserve it and say, "No, it's mine." I don't know.
So they reserved it.
Okay, we'll go with it.
Is everyone clear? So we are reserving during the week, but not on the weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we know what we're going to?
With the field and keeping it locked, is that something that we're anticipating just for the first year while things
I think then we have to
get established?
Yeah.
and then evaluate it.
Okay. The reason I was asking was if we are intending for it to be just until things get established, then it'd be nice to just put up a little sign explaining that. But
I like
if we're
that.
going to be potentially extend that out, then we don't want to give
I
the
think
wrong
during
expectation.
The first year till October, you're okay just to leave it as is, and then if you're open, then you can let the other teams know you're going to start your reservations different. Don't you think so? I mean, 'cause I don't think we have to signal, "Hey, next year you might be," because we don't know what we want to do next year.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen this year, too. We don't know how much demand there will be.
I do know baseball teams start reserving out when those reservations open up in January.
Yeah.
There'll be teams that'll be on there right on the site, January, whatever date, to go and make all those reservations for their teams.
Okay, next question is, do we want the option for people to give cash to our staff stripe the fields. Oh,
Pay the
that-
city to have, I should rephrase that. Pay the city to have staff stripe the fields.
Yeah.
Are we just really asking, or do we want to use our paid staff to stripe the field? And realizing it could be overtime.
And
Right. So we would charge the leagues who are renting to do that, basically.
How often do you have to stripe? Every game?
Before every game.
And usually it's the teams that stripe it.
Usually it's the city. So I did actually research this out to see how much other people were paying for that.
So in other cities, you're saying the cities go and stripe it before each game?
Mhm. But I mean, they have city leagues, or the league will do it also. So
We just got to be careful with staff time and getting back that
Yeah.
cost. I mean, you got to, if you have a staff, you're not going to, and are they going to be there on that Friday, Saturday, and in the evening? And
I think it's tricky when we're asking, like Parks has said, they need additional staff. Then I think it's really hard to throw one more thing on them without additional staff. I don't know, Josh, I don't know how long that takes.
you could just do it for tournaments. If there's a tournament there, I think in Orem they charge $250 to host a tournament, and that includes the city staff to groom and stripe it per day.
And that's why we're asking this question. We're on uncharted waters because we've never striped before this, but we've never had a field this nice either.
Yeah.
So that's why we're kind of
I mean, you
uncharted
gotta
waters.
have it
We're
striped,
asking.
though. Would you
So-
just then put it up to the teams to stripe it if they're going to have a game on there?
I think the city needs to stripe it so it's consistent.
Yeah.
Well, the
That's
cost
my gut feeling, but yeah, we're talking depending on use. This year it might not be very bad, but next year it could be phenomenal, and it could be quite the spill for guys to stripe. So
according to AI,
Good.
the cost to stripe a baseball field can range from a few $100s for basic chalk, that's for one time, and up to several $1,000s for professional grade field marking equipment and paint. That cost of the chalk, do we know what that is?
I have not looked. I can look into that and find out.
I mean, then I get worried about the staff, because also you're going, are we really recuperating? I mean, here we go, put this nice field, and I understand it's a nice field, but we're now starting to incur a lot of costs just to try to have people come use our field.
Well, I know, but isn't there some risk if you let private people stripe the field, because they might use paint and wreck your field when you could
They
use
won't use
chalk?
paint.
I don't know. I'm not a.
I mean, either way, you have to stripe it for a game. If
Right.
you want to have games, you have to be able to stripe it. So it just comes down to, are we going to have staff do it, or are we going to have a league do it?
I think it depends if it's the home field. Coming back, if someone takes, hey, they're reserving, that's their home field, I think they can do it. If the problem is if you have a one-off, or they're just coming one or two times, then I think we're going to have to stripe it.
But I think you need a professional doing it who knows what they're doing. And that
My gut feeling says we should do it, but I'm not advocating that's what we want to do. Just with the field and our home plate and our.
So I'll be transparent with saying that. Is there going to be a request for an additional employee now that we have to hire? It would be seasonal. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? Is this?
It could, and I'm being very honest. It could be because guys may get sick of working, and I'm just being realistic.
But it could be, I mean, depending on what it is, it could be a very part-time type of a gig.
Correct. It could
you
be a
know.
seasonal that you're picking up. And that probably makes more sense. Sounds
Mm-hmm.
like, so.
And it probably, I would favor that it would be someone that isn't a full-time staff that wants to work as much as they can for the summer and make some money striping the field. I would see it as that. I see some opportunity that it might not be every weekend, and then a full-time guy might have to step in.
Do we have the equipment?
No.
So we'd have to buy that.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing to look at. Council, any input on this? What do we want to do with the striping?
It has to be striped, so, I mean.
Do we need to buy that equipment to stripe it no matter what? Or
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's some, we haven't talked about everything, but there's still probably another interior fence for smaller play.
You got to do the retractable fence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's some things that come with this field that.
Well, I think it's one of those things, if you build it, you can't just halfway do it. you have to be able to build it to actually allow play to happen. And so that means you got to stripe the field. That means if you want a team to play on there other than a high school size, you got to have a retractable fence on there. That's just what happens when you build a facility like that.
And, my feeling is we need to maintain the park well. So I think
I agree.
you either have your staff who know how to do it, or you subcontract with somebody that knows how to do it. Because I don't think you want to have somebody that plays ball that comes in with a can of spray paint. I mean,
I agree.
I just think you need to maintain it. It's got to be kind of professionally done, either by the staff or a subcontractor. I don't know. Kim, you know so much more about this than I do, but it just seems like if we want to maintain this well, you've got to have it done right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's either a city staffer that does it, or if a league is on there, leagues do know how to maintain fields.
Right.
And they could do it. So they can either pay additional fee to have a staff do it, which is what happens, or the league can just say, we're not going to pay that additional fee, but we'll do it ourselves, which leagues do have people on their staff that knows how to maintain. And then they also have to nail drag the field as well and maintain it.
We just need to make sure that either we're just including that with the rental and our rental fees cover it, or we have a separate striping.
Yeah, so Orem does it where they say, yes, this is your rental fee for a tournament or a game. If you need additional maintenance by the staff to come and nail drag it before the game and to stripe it before the game, then we're going to charge you more.
I agree.
Okay, and we will, we've already kind of talked about the rate question, so we will be looking at neighboring cities and what the market can support for this kind of a field.
Okay. We'll now move on to our next item, which is going to be item number 6C, popcorn and snow cones for sale. Kim and Aaron.
Okay, and so food vendors in Highland Family Park. We've had a number of people ask us, hey, can we sell something in Highland Family? So we've had people ask about snow cone booths. Recently, we've had kids there selling cotton candy. We've had people ask about vending machines. And so really, to this point, we've said no. But then we're really feeling like we should get direction from the council. What do you want to do on this, right? Because in some instances, in a different scenario, we said yes to the farmer's market. So is this something council wants to do as well? So considerations. Food would be very popular there. There's no question, right? But food does bring some negative externalities, unfortunately, along with it. So more garbage. You guys have all seen pictures of overflowing garbage cans there. No, we pick them up once a day, and it's just hard to keep up on all of it. So we could be taking parking stalls away, right? If you've got to put a booth somewhere or a food truck there somewhere. More garbage throughout the park, right? Sticky things throughout the playground. Do you end up, if you say, okay, this vendor can come, do more start to come, right, because they think it's allowed? Does it mess with the pavilion, right? You know, if you're having a family reunion there, do you really want to also have food sales going on in a park? So I think it would be popular. It's just, do you want to do it, council? And then will you move forward one? So, and then if you do want to do it, how do you want to do it? Do you want to just authorize one vendor to be there, kind of a thing? So recently, like I said, we've had a resident ask, can I open a snow shack there? Do we want to do that? Do we want to open up an application and say, anybody who's interested, right, we're going to select a food vendor, right, to be at our park. Anybody who's interested, send us an application and then we'll decide. Do we want to start doing a food truck night there? We did build the park with that intention, right, that we could provide food trucks there. And then is this something, if we open it up at this park, should we be looking at other parks as well? So
what does the staff think? I mean, to me, it kind of makes sense if you have special events that you do it, but I'm not sure you want to do it on a daily basis.
Honestly, that's kind of where we're leaning as well, as like, we feel like if you do it like, you know, something that we know about, whether it's a city planned event or we do like a weekly food truck night or a monthly food truck night, we can be better prepared for the impact when it's, you know, and something that's scheduled versus an all of the time thing.
Kim, do you remember when we went to Cedar Hills and talked to them about Harvey Park? Yeah. And they said that one of their biggest regrets was that they have that snack shack there because it gets to be such a mess. Yeah, and it ends up being kids running it who just don't clean up and don't take care of it.
I think their issue was it was run by the city and it was a hard time for them trying to staff it. Well,
I thought they contracted with,
They finally went out, and I think they are contracting with a vendor.
but
Yes.
they've still been having problems
They
with
have,
it.
with the consistency of the vendor.
yeah.
What do you think?
I know that we specifically did a change order in this park to put electricity in so we could have food truck nights. So I would love to have that start happening in the summertime, like on a weekly basis of food truck nights. And I don't know how that works. If, does the city get a percentage of those food trucks like we did with the grand opening, allowing them on our property because they are on public property and we are having to clean up after them. So how does that work for food truck night? But then also we need to consider if we have somebody coming and saying, hey, can I have a snow shack here on public property? I do remember, we have the guy on the corner, how do I say it? The Trump flag guy, you know who I'm talking about, who sells all his jams and, fruit and everything. So we allow fruit and stands to be sold. And we have a policy in place where we said, yes, we can have certain of these fruit stands sold on our public property. So what are we saying? Can we have fruit stands now on public property? Can we have snow cone shacks on public property? We got to, I guess, establish a policy on that.
So the one you're talking at 6,000 West and SR 92 is on private property.
Oh.
And what they
It's on Thompson's property.
And the person I believe doing the Trump signs is actually selling honey because it's supposed to be kind of a like fruit stand or things.
It has to be produce that they're selling, and so
that honey. So if you notice, they have honey. They do have a lot of other flags and things. I did notice a vendor show up there selling clothes, and I'm going, okay, I don't think that's a fruit. They were there for several.
They're supposed to go through a process, and the gentleman you're talking about does have a permit with the city, and he's only supposed to sell honey. I'm not going to say that, or not just honey, produce, right? I'm not going to say that 100% all the time happens, but he is often reminded that the only thing he's allowed to sell there is honey.
Oh.
So anyway, so as we focus back in here, what do we see? I mean, we did design the park that has power to be able to have the food trucks come in. Some cities, I know Alpine, I think, has once a week during the summer, a weekly night of food truck. We could do it if it's weekly, or we could say, hey, we're going to do it monthly. We're going to do it the third Monday of each month. We'll have them you can have it. We always hear them say they want restaurants. It's a way to bring in a little mini restaurant at that time. And Kim, to your question, that would be up to us if we get a proceeds or not. There's the food truck rally group out there we can go to and say, if you come, we'd like to have X percentage, or no, we want to just have you come as a service.
How does Cedar Hills does it? Because they specifically built that roundabout for the food trucks.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, at Harvey Park.
Yeah, they did.
And then
I don't remember how they do it. I think special events would be fun.
I thought they did it once a week. It was like Food Truck Friday, and they had it once a week in the summertime.
And isn't that usually? I think it is set up through the Food Truck League, and I don't know if they pay a flat fee or a percentage, but
so
we'll find out.
How many days a week do we do the farmers market?
It's only on Thursday nights.
Why couldn't you do the food truck those nights too and just coordinate it?
They do. They bring in food trucks.
Yeah.
They have them at the farmers market.
Yeah.
One of the concerns I have about food truck at Family Park is the power is on the other side of the sidewalk. So to run the food truck, you've got to run your power lines across the sidewalk, thereby inhibiting our accessibility for people in wheelchairs.
Now, I believe they're in the. I think they're in the power poles. So you have the fence, the sidewalk, power poles.
It's half and half.
It's what?
Half of the ones on the north side are in the parking lot. The ones on the south side, you do have to cross the sidewalk to get to the power pole.
And those are the ones that, what I envision is cutting the sidewalk about 8 inches wide and putting a grate on top and running the power line underneath that grate so that wheelchairs can go over it. Either that or use the other side and don't use that side because.
So hold it. You're saying that we put the power on the other side of the sidewalk?
Yes, because the light poles are behind the sidewalk, and that's where the power's at.
Right. And that's the ones I'm talking
so
about.
that's all the ones on the south. So there's 2 light poles on the south side, on either side of the pavilion. Those are on the south side of the sidewalk. There are the 2 light poles on the north side of the parking lot that don't affect access.
So
It's the south side of
Ron-
it.
why would you
what
have
about-
food trucks on the south side of the pavilion?
Well, not south side, it's the south side of
Parking
the
lot.
park.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask you, Ron, could you put that little, like a little bump up thing where they come over? Is
Yeah,
that
you
what-
can, there's things that are made specifically for
for
that.
power, yeah.
It's just not the most ideal, and it's not a permanent solution. I'm just thinking long-term. To me, this is something we would look at, that if we start seeing that there is an accessibility problem, we don't wait for complaints, but once the food trucks are in there, we look at it and go, hey, this is really a problem. Then
you
we
go
can
cut.
come back and address it.
So then we have an option how to handle it. So let's go back. Food, okay, daily, having a daily snow cone or food vendor, weekly, monthly, or not at all? What's the council recommendation?
Not daily.
Not anything other than weekly. Monthly, we're not going to have anything. It would be weekly if we do it. I'm just saying if we
Weekly.
do it. Weekly is the
Weekly
only
and
way.
special events.
Weekly and special events, yeah.
What, other council feel the same? So do you want to have us reach out to the Food League and ask them to come like on a Monday night? We'd like to have the food truck rally or whatever on a Monday night at the park, or is that?
I think we should find out what other cities do so that we can negotiate when we call and just know if they're taking a percentage or a flat fee or nothing.
I'm okay to do that, because I can call the other cities. I mean, it appears a lot of cities do this food truck rally, and so I'm happy to kind of check with some of the other mayors and see how they're handling it, if they're getting some funding in that.
I think it's a good community involvement. I think it is. It pulls our community together to have something like this.
I know you owned a snow cone shack, so I just wanted to know, so where did you end up setting it up? Were you always on private, or?
I only did city events, and then we did corporate events, meaning that our city days, I never went and just went to a park and set up. It was always the city days, or it was corporate, parties that were going on, we'd go do and things that way. Now, there are others that want to be at a certain spot. You'll see that up at Macy's parking lot and things that way.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at rentals on the pavilion, but I don't know how far out.
Oh, we would want to consider that to try
Yes.
not
So
to
they have a place to
interfere.
sit.
Yeah, that way someone doesn't have a family event, and let's say we just chose Mondays, and most of the Mondays are full throughout the summer
That'd
already.
be a
Does
good
that make
suggestion.
sense? Like, it might not be very effective this year. It may be something we might want to think about for next year and planning ahead.
So
I
we can
I
do
haven't
that.
looked at the calendar for a little while. It was pretty full.
That's a good point, Josh. I think the other thing too, I don't know if you guys have had a chance yet, but we have to meet her, but we have a new events coordinator. Her name is Christina Medina. And I think that she would love this idea and would love to run with it a little bit, Mayor. So I think between you and her, we can kind of look at what other cities do and go from there.
So you're going to come up with a policy on cost and that, because we got to cover our costs.
Yeah, I think we got to go with
Absolutely.
what Josh is
Yeah.
saying, 'cause it is, if you're doing the food trucks, they do need a place at least to sit. So
Right.
you got to be careful if the large pavilions is booked up. Now, there are two other smaller pavilions, but I think we can look to see what nights, if there is, and that might be where, hey, it appears our Wednesday nights are more open, or a Thursday, Now, we got to be careful. I don't think we do a Thursday because you don't want to compete against the farmer's market.
Right.
So two things. Number one, it's 10 o'clock. And number two, it just always bugs me that we actually have a snack shack that we don't actually use for anything.
Well, and that's the next question. We are putting in that, by the baseball thing, did we put it so they could do a snack shack there at the baseball?
There's
And
like a
now
snow
it's
cone machine in there. There's
No,
mayonnaise
you're
in
okay,
there.
that's at Heritage Park. There's
Yeah,
something.
at Heritage.
And then what about this?
There is no plumbing in the one behind the baseball.
We intended that for more of a maintenance shed. We went back and forth about whether to do it and settled it no.
But we have a snack shack at Heritage Park and is used as a storage facility for Lone Peak. It is owned by Highland City. Can we, as Highland, make sure that we use our own building and we can have it as a snack shack?
Because there's nothing in that bottom part other than old
was
snacks.
the reason they weren't doing the snack shack, they didn't feel it was profitable when they were doing their games?
Nobody wanted to run it.
So, I mean, we can say we want to do something with it, but don't.
I mean, I know kids that would love to run a snack shack right there, but I mean, it's full of Lone Peak storage stuff of all their old uniforms. Can we tell them to clean it out because it's ours?
Or charge them rent. to do
Or
it.
charge them rent for it? But also, can we please have a contract signed with them? Because they just worked on Burgess Field, fixing it up, putting a lot of money into it. And we've gone years without a contract with them, and they
There
have
is one way to get a
24/7
contract.
access.
They can't use the field unless they have.
They're
to.
using it. They have games on it right now.
And this isn't Josh's fault. It's
Oh,
been
no, I'm
in,
not
the
trying
ball's
to-
been in my court. We have a draft actually that Rob finished up last week, and honestly, I've dropped the ball on this one, and I need to get it done. And so we're working to get as what we can done this year. And honestly, it's just something I've failed at.
And if we
in our
have the
council.
contract, we give them till May 1st. If not, until the contract's done, they don't use the field. I mean, it's going.
Yeah, we can.
They need to maintain it.
Yeah, but that's part of the contract.
And that's what the contract says, is you've got to get it to a good level of maintenance and keep it there, right? Like you've got to turn it back over to us at this certain level. And we'd like to in the future talk about, and then you've got to do an extra project for us, right? Kind of a thing.
Now we're going to go back to
Absolutely.
that snack shack. If they're there, we got to determine, hey, they're using that building. Are we getting compensated for that building, or are we
Oh.
going to open? I don't know if a city we really want to take on to the snack shack, but
And honestly, my experience, so I grew up doing snack shacks. That was like my high school thing. And they're not profitable unless you got a lot of fields altogether. Otherwise, you don't make money on them. At least that was my experience. Granted, I was a kid a long time ago. So
If there's a group that approached you and said, hey, can we sell stuff out of the snack shack during games? I mean, could we have a group do that?
I think that's totally up to council if you want to
Council, if
let
we
that
have someone
happen.
wanna do it during games at the Highland.
I think we should discuss it. I think it'd be good.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor,
I mean, Briggs keeps asking me where the snack shack is. They used to have a snack shack a couple years ago. Just a couple kids opened it up and sold candy out of it.
Hey, I got a question before we agree with this.
Yeah.
Are there still lucky suckers when you open it up? You get a second sucker.
Absolutely.
Okay, then you can do it.
Mr. Mayor,
There's old nacho cheese in that snack shack.
I move to extend the meeting to 10:20.
Okay, we have a motion for 10:20. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Those not in favor?
Nay.
Nay.
Then we are not.
That means we're adjourned.
We're adjourned. We need to have a motion to go to closed session.
Is there anything else on
No,
there?
okay. Is there anything
Are
else?
we
We have the police department report. Guys,
Oh, no.
we have the police department report we haven't heard. We haven't heard the East-West Collector Road update. I don't think there's.
I mean,
lots
there's some fun things. There's nothing urgent. So
We can do this later, and it's in the packet.
Are you okay, Chief?
Just 3.
Okay. We do have a closed meeting. Do we have a motion on the closed meeting that we have?
I think technically we're required to adjourn immediately under our resolution.
Well, I guess that's true unless we go to close. Now, do we have to do it for closed session?
please,
Rob?
we please, yes.
Rob, so if we had the vote to not, are we supposed to just adjourn and not go to closed session? Or do we need to have a motion to go into closed session without having the 10 o'clock? How's that work?
I don't know.
He's tired. We have some items in closed session we need to discuss. So we need a
Maybe
motion.
just you make a motion, but to extend the meeting and for the purpose of going into closed session and then rest of motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we extend the meeting to 10:35 and immediately recess the regular city council meeting to convene in a closed meeting in the executive conference room to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, the purpose of exchange or lease of real property, and the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual.
Second.
I have a motion by Doug, second by Ron. All in favor to go to closed session?
Roll
Aye.
call.
Oh, we have to do roll call? Okay, Brittany. Scott.
Now, wait a minute. Well, we extended the meeting by a half hour too in that motion.
Yeah, but that's because we're going into closed session.
Because we're going into close.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, Scott, yes or no?
No.
Okay, Doug,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
and Ron. Yes. We are now adjourned to closed session. That was a 4-1 vote with Scott voting no.